Chapter 2257. Voracious Wolf. Giant Door. Lutsuan. Tianji. 7 kills. Tualuo. Army Destroyer. The 7 forms of the 9 mystic immortal arts slashed down at the same time. While he was comprehending swordsmanship in the sword sect, Chu Fengmian had also comprehended the last move of the 7 moves of the 9 profound immortal art, the Army Destroyer. Although the 9 mystic immortal art was created by the 9 mystic celestial venerate, its true power surpassed most immortal emperor immortal arts. The power of the stars condensed and gathered on the 2 swords in Chu Fengmian's hands. Suddenly, he slashed out with sword chi, and the power of the stars poured down like a vast ocean. Each of the stars contained supreme sword intent. Now, the 9 mystic immortal art had been completely integrated into the 9 realms sword technique by Chu Fengmian. The boundless sea of stars shrouded in Qianzhua, the human demon supremacy, the battle demon supremacy, and the northern sword immortal. In the sea of stars, there were countless swords slashing down at every moment. In Qianzhua's immortal energy burst out and shrouded the northern sword immortal and the others, blocking the thousands of swords in the sea of stars. The Northern Sword Immortal was one of the famous patriarchs of the Tianjian sect. In the past tens of thousands of years, the number of patriarchs in the Tianjian sect was few and far between. In Qianzhua naturally could not sit idly by and watch the Northern Sword Immortal be killed by Chu Fengmian. However, even if In Qianzhua went all out, his immortal energy could only shroud everyone and protect them. He could not divert any power to counterattack. "I'd like to see how long you can hold on." Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. The power in his body was almost endless. He had just used all his strength to unleash the power of the stars and the 9 mystic sword technique. In the next moment, another wave of power erupted from Chu Fengmian's sword. 3 Suns Blazing Sword. Inside Chu Fengmian's body, the power of the divine body of ice and fire suddenly burst out. The pure yang heavenly fire condensed on the tip of his sword. As Chu Fengmian's sword suddenly slashed down, the pure yang heavenly fire turned into a sword light that was tens of thousands of feet long, aiming directly at In Qianzhua. After the fire was gone, the next thing to appear was the wind. 4 Directions Hurricane Sword. The second move of the first sword art, 4 Directions Hurricane Sword, slashed down at the same time, and a hurricane poured down from the sky. At this moment, the third sword was also condensing. 6 Directions Mysterious Water Sword. Out of nowhere, the water vapor condensed into a monstrous wave. 3 swords were unleashed simultaneously. The 3 moves of the first sword technique could be said to be Chu Fengmian's 3 most powerful moves apart from the 9 region sword technique that he had created himself. Originally, Chu Fengmian had to pause for a short while to recover his strength every time he used the 3 swords. After all, these 3 swords were the Immortal Emperor sword arts, and they were invincible sword arts that were ranked among the top 10 ancient celestial immortal arts. They were very powerful, and they consumed a lot of energy. But now, as Chu Fengmian's strength became stronger and stronger, he was able to use all 3 swords in an instant. The first sword emperor's sword techniques had the power to complement each other. Now that Chu Fengmian had activated the power of the 3 swords at the same time, the power of the 3 swords was much more terrifying than the power of the 3 swords alone. Damn it! This is the first sword art. The legendary first sword art that was ranked among the top 10 ancient celestial immortal arts. How did this kid get such a sword art? Even the Sword Dao sect doesn't have such a sword art. Where did he get it? Looking at the power of the 3 swords that Chu Fengmian had unleashed, In Qianzhua's face changed drastically. The power of the 3 swords, 1 fire, 1 wind, and 1 water, made him recognize the origin of the 3 swords at a glance. Suddenly, his face turned extremely ugly. As soon as the 3 swords landed on him, his immortal force shattered into pieces as he was unable to resist the attack. In Qianzhua's immortal energy shattered. The human demon supremacy, battle demon supremacy, northern sword immortal, and the others who were under In Qianzhua's protection were all sent flying. They fell into the star ocean and were instantly killed by the thousands of swords. Ah! the human demon supremacy was the first to be sent flying. His body fell into the star ocean and was instantly slashed by the thousands of swords. Following a miserable scream, the human demon supremacy's body was instantly shattered. His blood essence that filled the sky was directly devoured by a force in the star ocean. He died on the spot. After demonization, the human demon supremacy's strength was comparable to the immortal king realm. Just like that, he died in the star ocean. He was only the first. After killing the human demon supremacy, the thousands of swords slashed towards the battle demon supremacy. Although the battle demon supremacy's body had been tempered and was incomparably tough, ordinary injuries could be instantly healed. However, the thousands of swords slashed his body. No matter how strong the battle demon supremacy's recovery ability was, he couldn't recover. Under the thousands of swords, his body was forcibly torn apart. His blood essence was devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique and turned into Chu Fengmian's power. "Swordmaster, save me!" Northern Sword Taoist shouted loudly. He was also trapped in the star ocean. There was no hope for him to get out of it. He didn't want to die like the human demon supremacy and battle demon supremacy. His only hope now was the phantom sword immortal, Ing Qianzhua. Shadow sword evil slaying. Ing Qianzhua's eyes were incomparably cold. His figure flashed. After escaping from the star ocean, he saw Northern Sword immortal. Suddenly, 7 spiritual swords appeared behind his back. The 7 spiritual swords were all immortal items. When the 7 swords flew out, they formed a sword formation and flew to Taoist North Sword's side to protect him. "You still dare to divert your attention to save others at this time?" However, the moment Ing Qianzhua's 7 spiritual swords flew out, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly rushed in front of Ing Qianzhua. The sword in his hand slashed down fiercely at Ing Qianzhua. Chu Fengmian's speed was so fast that even Ing Qianzhua couldn't see it clearly. In this void, Chu Fengmian could easily travel through space. His speed was even faster than a true immortal king expert. The moment the sword slashed down, a dragon roar resounded. The comprehension of the 9 moves of primogenitor was condensed in this sword. It was aimed at Ing Qianzhua and slashed down. In an instant, Ing Qianzhua felt a great sense of danger. Even though Ing Qianzhua was an immortal king, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. His eyes were cold. Suddenly, he made a prompt decision and retracted the sword array formed by the 7 spiritual swords. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 2258. The moment Ing Qianzhua sensed the danger, he immediately withdrew the 7 spiritual swords and formed a sword array in front of him, blocking Chu Fengmian's sword. As a result, the Northern Sword immortal lost all protection and fell into the sea of stars, drowning in it. "No!" The Northern Sword immortal screamed as his body was mercilessly torn apart by thousands of swords. All of his essence and blood poured into Chu Fengmian's body and turned into his power. "They're dead. It's your turn now." The human demon sovereign, the war demon sovereign, and the Northern Sword immortal had all fallen. Now, only Ing Qianzhua was left. When Ing Qianzhua was stared at by Chu Fengmian, he shuddered. "How long are you guys going to wait? If this brat doesn't die today, don't think you'll have an easy time." Suddenly, Ing Qianzhua roared, his voice resounding in the void. "Ing Qianzhua, as an immortal king, you can't even deal with this brat? I really don't want to be an immortal king like a trash like you." Just as Ing Qianzhua roared, a cold voice suddenly sounded. The surrounding space was torn apart by a force, and a figure walked out from it. It was a white-haired old man, but he looked very young. He had white hair and a crane-like complexion. He was wearing a long robe that contained an ancient aura. He was playing with a jade bead in his hand, spinning it in his hand. In the jade bead, some ancient scenes appeared. There were giant beasts that were hundreds of feet tall and giant birds that could cover the sky with their wings. They were all ancient wild beasts. Desolate ancient bead. The moment Chu Fengmian saw the jade bead, his eyes turned cold. He recognized the origin of the jade bead. It was the desolate ancient bead, one of the 4 desolate treasures of the desolate ancient sect. The 4 desolate treasures were said to be the sect's most powerful spiritual weapons that had been passed down since the founding of the desolate ancient sect. Each of them contained an incomparably terrifying power that could communicate with the desolate ancient sect. In the hands of an expert from the desolate ancient sect, it could unleash the power of a top-grade immoral artifact. This jade pearl was called the desolate ancient pearl. It was one of the 4 desolate treasures. Chu Fengmian had heard of the 4 desolate treasures 10,000 years ago. So it's the 3rd supreme elder of the desolate ancient sect. Chu Fengmian looked at the old man with white hair and crane-like complexion. There was a hint of familiarity in his eyes as he recognized the origin of the old man. The 3rd supreme elder of the desolate ancient sect. Within the barren ancient sect, the supreme elders were the most powerful. The barren ancient sect's cultivation techniques were extremely strange. They relied on their mastery of the barren ancient Tao. The longer they cultivated, the stronger they would become. Therefore, the group of old men in the barren ancient sect were the strongest in the barren ancient sect. As for the 3rd supreme elder, he was one of the strongest supreme elders in the barren ancient sect. Other than the mysterious 1st supreme elder, the 3rd supreme elder was the strongest person in the desolate ancient sect. In the battle against the Lord of the Sword Tao, the 3rd prime elder had joined the battle as well. "You recognize me?" The old man with white hair and crane-like complexion stared at Chu Fengmian coldly. It might have been a coincidence that Chu Fengmian had called out Ing Qianzuo's name. However, if even the old man could recognize his identity, then Chu Fengmian was definitely someone from 10,000 years ago. They had all been injured in the battle against the Lord of the Sword Tao. They had not been active in the 9 regions for 10,000 years. The younger generation of martial artists and demon gods in the 9 regions would not be able to recognize their origins. Chu Fengmian could easily recognize their origins. The only possibility was that Chu Fengmian was someone from 10,000 years ago and had also experienced that battle. The Tianjian sect, the desolate ancient sect, and the 6-path demon sect are all here. There's no need for the rest to hide. Or do you want me to find you one by one? Chu Fengmian did not pay attention to the old man. Instead, he looked around him. His gaze swept across the area, and he knew that the white-haired old man was not the only one who was hiding in the surroundings. Humph! As soon as Chu Fengmian finished speaking, 2 more figures appeared. They were both middle-aged men and were not as strong as the old man. They were on par with the Northern Sword Immortal. The 2 of them were also from the desolate ancient sect. They appeared and stood respectfully behind the white-haired old man. "Huang Yuan, Bai Mu." Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. These 2 were the most talented geniuses in the desolate ancient sect 10,000 years ago. After 10,000 years, they had also stepped into the immortal general realm and became giants in the desolate ancient sect. When they appeared, the space was torn apart again. This time, 2 burly men walked out of the void. They were several times taller than ordinary martial artists and could be called giants. 7-colored light emerged from their backs. This 7-colored light was not a type of technique. Instead, it was something that appeared naturally. Saint Monarch Glass Body, great success. This 7-colored light was called the Glass Light. It was formed naturally when one cultivated the Saint Monarch Glass Body, the strongest body refining technique of the Saint Monarch sect, to great success. The physical strength of a great success Saint Monarch Glass Body was comparable to that of an immortal general realm martial artist or a demon immortal. It was even close to the immortal king realm. There were only a few experts in the Saint Monarch sect who could cultivate the Saint Monarch Glass Body to great success. Vice Sect Master Qian Yun, 8th Battle Saint. Chu Fengmian recognized the 2 men at a glance. Those who could step into the immortal general realm were almost all people from 10,000 years ago. There were 2 people from the Sage Monarch sect. Qian Yun had been the vice sect leader of the Sage Monarch sect 10,000 years ago. The other person was the 8th Battle Sage, who was known as the Sage Monarch sect. In the Saint Monarch sect, those who could become saints were all experts with invincible physical bodies. These 2 men were not the strongest in the Saint Monarch sect, but they were at the top. When the 2 of them appeared, they looked at Chu Fengmian. Eighth Battle Saint could not help but talk to himself. It's indeed a little strange. The monstrous geniuses of the Sword Dao sect should have been killed. Where did this kid come from? He looked at Chu Fengmian with a hint of confusion. Although the Sword Dao sect was strong for a period of time, there were not many true disciples of the Sword Dao sect. They knew almost all of them. But looking at Chu Fengmian's face, they felt that he was a little unfamiliar. He did not look like anyone from the Sword Dao sect. But what Chu Fengmian knew could only be known by the official disciples of the Sword Dao sect. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 2259. What's the point of wasting so much energy? Let's take this kid down and feed him some poison. He'll spill everything. It just so happens that I've recently refined a cauldron of purgatory poison pills. I can feed it to this kid. Suddenly, the surrounding space was torn apart again, and an old man in a black robe slowly walked out from it. The moment the old man in black robes appeared, a medicinal fragrance appeared in the surroundings. This medicinal fragrance was intoxicating and incomparably sweet. But the moment they smelled this medicinal fragrance, the expressions of everyone present changed abruptly. Many of them gathered their strength and formed a barrier, completely isolating themselves from this medicinal fragrance. They looked as if they were facing a great enemy. The old poison master is actually the chief poison master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Why is this lunatic here too? Seeing this black-robed old man called the old poison master, many people frowned. Even existences like King Qianzhua and the 8 battle saints looked at the old poison master with unparalleled fear in their eyes. The old poison master, the chief poison master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. No one knew his real name. Even in Chu Fengmian's memory, this old man should have been known as the old poison master 10,000 years ago. At that time, he was the chief poison master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was known as the largest medicine sect among the 7 major sects. But in reality, the Valley of the Medicine Masters cultivated both alchemy and poison. Many disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had cultivated many poison techniques. And this old poison master was undoubtedly the #1 expert among all the experts of the Valley of the Medicine Masters who had cultivated poison techniques. Even a bottle of the poison he had refined could destroy the life of an entire continent. The number of warriors and demon gods who had died to the poison refined by the old poison master was more than 10 billion. The blood stain on his hands was something that even the giants of the demonic path could not compare to. This old poison master's poison techniques had already reached a level of silence. Standing beside him, if one was slightly careless, one would be poisoned to death without knowing how. Therefore, even immortal kings like King Qianzhua and the 8 battle sages were extremely fearful of the old poison master. Fortunately, they also knew that the old poison master was not here to stop Chu Fengmian, but to deal with Chu Fengmian. He also wanted to get a share of the profits from Chu Fengmian. Although the Shang Sword sect was a sect that was famous for its Sword Dao, there was also a force like the Pill Hall that controlled the Medicine Dao. Among the countless immortal pill manuals on the signboard of the Pill Palace, there were also many poison pill concocting methods. This old poison master came here for these pill formulas. Including the human demon supremacy and the battle demon supremacy, who had already died at Chu Fengmian's hands, 5 out of the 7 major sects had sent experts over. Moreover, almost all of those who came were patriarchs who had been hiding in various sections. They could be said to be the strongest group of people. Since the upheaval of the 9 domains, such a scene had never happened before. Today, they came from the depths of the void just for Chu Fengmian alone. However, it was not enough to gather so many experts just for the inheritance of the Shang Sword sect. The reason why so many of them came was because of Chu Fengmian's identity. Only those who were related to the Sword Dao sect could gather so many experts together. Looking at so many experts in front of him, Chu Fengmian's eyes did not show any signs of nervousness. Instead, he revealed a somewhat cold expression. He would have a battle with the 7 major sects sooner or later. It seemed like today was the day of the decisive battle. In Qianzhua, the 8 battle sages and the others could be said to be the strongest experts in their respective sections. Today, if Chu Fengmian could kill all of them, it could be said that the strength of the 7 major sects would be weakened to the lowest point. The people of the Heavenly Pivot Hall and the ancient Moon Valley are not here? Chu Fengmian's eyes swept across the void and suddenly sneered. No need to hide. Since you're here, show yourselves. As Chu Fengmian spoke, his eyes suddenly looked in a direction. That direction was originally an incomparably calm void. However, as Chu Fengmian spoke, a wave suddenly appeared in the void. Then, a figure slowly walked out of the void. What a good kid. You can even see through my concealment. You're indeed an anomaly. It was a middle-aged man wearing a long robe with a crescent moon embroidered on it. His eyes were fixed on Chu Fengmian, as if he wanted to see through Chu Fengmian's background. With his strength, even an immortal king expert of the same realm would find it difficult to detect him when he was concealed. However, Chu Fengmian saw through his figure with a single glance. Crescent Moon Shakyamuni, it's really you this time. Everyone was very clear about the middle-aged man's identity. It could be said that the experts of the 7 major sects of the 9 regions had always been the same few. They were all very familiar with each other. Chu Fengmian was also clear about the identity of these people. However, to them, Chu Fengmian's identity was incomparably mysterious. You're all here. The more the better. Let's get rid of all of you together so that I don't have to look for you one by one. As more and more experts gathered, Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. However, at this time, no one made a move. It was as if they were still waiting for others. At this moment, a voice resounded from the sky above everyone's head. Strange. Even the most dazzling disciples of the Sword Dao sect didn't have such heaven-defying talent. Where did this person come from? Another figure sounded. This time, it wasn't a human figure that appeared, but a ray of starlight that descended from the sky. This ray of starlight contained specks of stars, forming a galaxy. The voice was transmitted from this galaxy. The people of Alpha Hall are still as mysterious as before. They're actually using a secret technique at this time. Seeing this galaxy, many people snorted in disdain. This galaxy was a secret technique, a great array. The specks of stars in it represented the eye of the array. A Alpha Hall disciple and a total of 3,000 Alpha Hall disciples used their full strength to activate the secret technique to form this galaxy. This galaxy condensed above Chu Fengmian's head, as if it had a pair of eyes and was sizing up Chu Fengmian. The experts of the 7 major sects had officially gathered. Except for the 2 from the 6 Paths Demon sect who were killed by Chu Fengmian, the remaining experts of the 6 major sects were all present. Very good. You're finally here. Today, it's time to settle the scores from 10,000 years ago. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept across the crowd. His eyes were filled with blood-red killing intent. Calm. Wonderful bookhouse. Chapter 2260. What an arrogant tone. Brat, do you think you can fight against us all by yourself? The 8 battle saints snorted coldly when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. This time, the experts of the 7 major sects had gathered to deal with Chu Fengmian alone. Even the 8 battle saints would be in great danger if they were involved, let alone Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian's performance was monstrous, he was only half a step away from the celestial realm. If it were anyone else, the 8 battle saints wouldn't even look at them in the eye. Moreover, this time, it could be said that all the experts of the 7 major sects had come out. Even if Chu Fengmian had any trump cards or helpers, they were not afraid at all. In the entire 9 regions, and even in the entire extraterritorial starry sky, there were few forces that could contend with them. Contend? No, today, none of you will leave here alive. I will use your blood as a sacrifice to my master and the Swordway sect. Chu Fengmian listened to the 8 battle saints and said calmly. The arrogance in his words made many people not far away look askance. The 7 major sects had such a big lineup this time, and so many experts had come out one after another. Everyone in the 9 regions knew about it. Even the experts who were not interested in the Swordway sect's inheritance had come to the depths of the void. They didn't come for the Swordway sect's inheritance, but to witness this grand event. It could be said that since the fall of the Swordway sect and the fall of the Swordway sect 10,000 years ago, this was the most intense battle in the past 10,000 years. It was a lucky thing to be able to witness such a battle. Among the onlookers, many people were shocked when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. The arrogance in his words was simply unprecedented. The so-called arrogant geniuses of the 9 regions were nothing compared to Chu Fengmian. Even the most arrogant geniuses would be respectful when facing the 8 battle saints. The 8 battle saints, in Qianzhua, were existences that could shake the 9 regions with a stomp of their feet. Now, Chu Fengmian's words meant that he wanted to kill all of them here. What exactly is this person relying on? Some onlookers stared at Chu Fengmian. They didn't understand why Chu Fengmian dared to be so arrogant. Could it be that this person is backed by a sacred sect? Someone made a guess. Impossible. Even if he has a sacred region sect behind him, it's impossible for him to be so arrogant. The passageway to the 9 domains is completely closed. Although there are experts from the 3 sacred regions who can come to the 9 domains, they are restricted by the rules. At most, there are a few juniors who can come here. It's impossible for them to compete with the 8 battle saints. An old and knowledgeable Yao God shook his head and said, "Looks like this kid knows that he's in a hopeless situation today, so he's putting up a strong front. Then this kid is dead for sure. Can't we find a chance to try and get some treasures from him?" Another warrior said. His eyes were burning with greed. Chu Fengmian was able to obtain the inheritance of Sword Dao sect and Upper Sword sect. He must have a lot of treasures on him. Especially Chu Fengmian, who was only a half-step celestial being, was able to kill an immortal marquis expert. This kind of strength was shocking and unique. The treasures on Chu Fengmian's body were a great opportunity for them. Among these onlookers, there were some who wanted to fish in troubled waters and get some benefits from Chu Fengmian. As long as the 7 great sects are willing to take action, this man is dead for sure. However, the experts of the 7 great sects have some scruples now. This man has inherited the inheritance of the Sword Dao sect and the Upper Sword sect. He might have some trump cards up his sleeves. He was able to contend against Ding Qianzhua before, but once he goes all out, he might be able to kill a few experts here. The Yao God sneered and said, "Human Demon Lord, Battle Demon Lord, and Northern Sword Immortal were all killed by him. If you want to die, go ahead." Although there were some immortal marquis experts among the onlookers, they were not worth mentioning in front of Chu Fengmian. After all, even Human Demon Lord, Northern Sword Immortal, and the others were killed by Chu Fengmian. These people were all at the peak of Immortal Marquis. Their strength was close to the Immortal King realm when they activated their secret techniques. They were all killed by Chu Fengmian. These ordinary Immortal Marquises were not comparable to Northern Sword Immortal. Hearing the Yao God's words, many onlookers gave up on the idea in their hearts. Although the treasures on Chu Fengmian were tempting, they were not willing to take such a big risk. Of course, not everyone retreated in the face of difficulties. Those who were able to become experts were those who had gone through life and death battles. They had obtained opportunities amidst danger. Everyone knew the logic of seeking riches and honor amidst danger. They were all staring at Chu Fengmian. They were also prepared to take action at the most dangerous moment to snatch some of the treasures. The 7 major sects were not the only ones who had their eyes on Chu Fengmian. The other forces of the 9 domains, the extraterritorial starry sky, and even the martial artists and Yao gods of the 3 sacred domains were hiding in the surroundings, watching Chu Fengmian. As long as Chu Fengmian was in danger, they would not hesitate to pounce on him, kill him, and seize his treasures. What? No one is taking the initiative to attack? None of the immortal kings of the 7 major sects dares to deal with a puny half-step celestial being? Chu Fengmian glanced around, his eyes flashing with disdain. The more arrogant Chu Fengmian was, the more fearful the experts of the 7 major sects were in front of him. They did not understand what Chu Fengmian's trump card was. Humph, if you don't want to attack, I will. I want to see how powerful a mere half-step celestial being kid can be. A cold snort sounded, and a tall figure stepped out. It was the 8th battle saint from the Sage Monarch sect. He was the first to step out, unable to bear Chu Fengmian's provocation. The 8th battle saint's body was several times bigger than Chu Fengmian's. Chu Fengmian stood in front of the 8th battle saint, as weak as a chicken. Seeing that the 8th battle saint chose to take the initiative to attack, the experts of the other 7 major sects did not make a move. Their eyes fell on the 8th battle saint and Chu Fengmian. They also wanted to use the 8th battle saint to test Chu Fengmian's trump card and see what Chu Fengmian was relying on. Chapter 2261. Die for me. The 8th war saint took a step forward, and the 7-colored light behind him became even more dazzling. He circulated the strength of his body, and with a loud bang, he gathered his strength on his fist and blasted it towards Chu Fengmian. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the moment the fist blasted out, the surrounding space trembled. Under this punch, the heavens and earth collapsed. A punch that purely relied on the strength of his body was close to the full strength of a peak immortal king. This was the strength of the Sage Monarch sect. They were a sect that focused purely on body refinement. The Sage Monarch sect relied on body refinement to become immortal kings. These 8 battle sages were considered freaks amongst immortal kings. So strong. When the spectators felt the power of this punch, they all sucked in a breath of cold air, and their hearts trembled. The power of this punch could kill any immortal marquis without a doubt. Experts like the 8 war saints hadn't fought for 10,000 years. Although the spectators had heard of his name, they didn't take it seriously. Now that they saw the 8 war saints in action, they finally understood the strength of such experts. The 7 major sects had destroyed the Sword Dao sect, and many of the treasures in the sect were divided among the 7 major sections. The 8 war saints had also obtained great benefits from that battle. The strength of his attack was several times stronger than 10,000 years ago. However, the Chu Fengmian of this life was no longer the weak Chu Jianbai of his previous life. Immortal. Facing this punch, Chu Fengmian didn't dodge it like what the spectators had expected. Instead, he met it head-on. At the same time, Chu Fengmian muttered in his heart. In Chu Fengmian's body, 129,600 crystals suddenly gathered together, forming a great array. A steady stream of energy poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian also blasted out a punch. Strength against strength. Asterisk boom. Asterisk as the 2 fists collided, the fists of the 8 war saints stopped in midair. It was not as he had imagined, where they would destroy Chu Fengmian as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Instead, the 2 forces were in a stalemate, with no clear winner or loser. This result was incomparably shocking to the 8 war saints. You can withstand my strength? The 8 battle saints stared fixedly at Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, their eyes flashed with astonishment. I'd like to see how many punches you can take. In an instant, the 8 war saints attacked again. They condensed their fists and bombarded Chu Fengmian with punches. Chu Fengmian didn't try to evade. Instead, he used his fists to meet the attacks head-on. The collision of fists was purely a collision of brute force. Under the repeated attacks, the 129,600 figures within Chu Fengmian's body began to crack and shatter. However, the moment the 129,600 immortal crystals started to shatter, a huge amount of golden essence blood rushed in and repaired the shattered immortal crystals. Chu Fengmian had killed the human demon sovereign, the Northern Sword Enlightened Master, and dozens of immortal generals and marquises. Their essence blood had been devoured by Chu Fengmian with the heaven-devouring secret art and stored in his body. Chu Fengmian's strength had reached a bottleneck. If he didn't leave the 9 regions to undergo the celestial tribulation, his strength wouldn't be able to grow any further. However, while his strength couldn't grow, his body was far from the limit. The strongest point of the immortal true body was its rebirth. Even if the immortal crystals were shattered, they could be reformed in an instant as long as there was a large amount of energy. Moreover, after devouring the golden essence blood, the reconstructed immortal crystals were even more powerful than before. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't dodge at all when facing the 8 war saints. He directly resisted with brute force. He wasn't afraid even if his immortal crystals were shattered. The amount of golden essence blood he had obtained was enough to shatter and reconstruct all 129,600 immortal crystals in his body dozens of times. He didn't care about the golden essence blood that would be consumed several times. On the contrary, the power of the immortal crystals was getting stronger and stronger. This made Chu Fengmian very happy. However, Chu Fengmian didn't show it. He only displayed the strength of his body at the beginning and barely resisted the attacks of the 8 war saints. Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste such a good sparring partner. It's a stalemate. Even the 8 war saints can't kill this kid? Looking at the battle in the void, Ying Qianzhua, the white-haired elder, Qian Yun, and the others were all shocked. Especially Qian Yun, who came from the sage monarch sect like the 8 war saints. He naturally knew the strength of the 8 war saints. With the brute force of the 8 war saints, unless it was a martial artist or demon immortal who also stepped into the immortal king realm through the way of body refining, even a martial artist like Ying Qianzhua who was also an immortal king would not be able to resist the 8 war saints' brute force. But now, although Chu Fengmian was at a disadvantage, he could faintly contend with the 8 war saints. This also meant that Chu Fengmian's body was almost at the level of an immortal king. Even Qian Yun, who cultivated the way of body refining, couldn't understand how Chu Fengmian could have a body comparable to an immortal king realm cultivator. I've seen a martial artist with the immortal true body. That martial artist was already in the immortal true body. Although he was powerful, it wasn't to this extent. The old poison master of the Medicine King sect also spoke slowly. Martial artists and demon immortals with the immortal true body were rare, but with his experience, he had seen them before. But Chu Fengmian's current physical body was much more powerful than that of the person he had seen before. The group of immortal kings present were all figures who had lived for tens of thousands of years and had seen a lot. But now, they couldn't understand how Chu Fengmian's physical body was so powerful. But they couldn't be blamed. They naturally couldn't imagine that Chu Fengmian had already reached the 3rd level of the immortal true body. In fact, many people didn't know that the immortal true body was divided into levels. Even Chu Fengmian used to think that the immortal true body was only a level of physical body, a level of great success in the way of body refining. Only after Chu Fengmian had condensed the immortal true body did he know that there were strong and weak immortal true bodies. Most martial artists and demon immortals who had condensed the immortal true body had only condensed the 1st level. It was extremely rare for them to reach the 2nd level. But Chu Fengmian had reached the 3rd level. So even these immortal kings couldn't understand how powerful Chu Fengmian's physical body was. It doesn't matter if his physical body is strong or his recovery ability is strong. This person's physical body is broken, and each time he has to spend a lot of energy to recover. If this continues, he will be exhausted to death by the 8 war saints sooner or later. Everyone discussed for a while but couldn't figure it out. They could only give up, but their expressions were still relaxed. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2262. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian's physical body was, he could only passively take a beating. His body had been destroyed time and time again, and it would take a lot of energy to reconstruct it. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, no matter how many pills he had to restore his strength, he would be exhausted to death one day. The 8 war saints burst out with their full strength, bombarding Chu Fengmian's body with their fists. Chu Fengmian stood there, blocking the attacks. There were several times when Chu Fengmian's body was about to be completely destroyed, but at this crucial moment, a burst of energy would suddenly erupt from Chu Fengmian's body and reconstruct his body. After a full 10 minutes, after a few times, the 8 war saints' eyes showed some impatience. I won't waste time with you. To be able to die under my all-out attack is also a kind of honor for you, right? Die for me. Before he could finish his sentence, the figure of the eighth battle sacred figure suddenly became illusionary. Following this, his figure split into two, then three. In the blink of an eye, there were eight eighth battle sacred figures. Every single one of these eight battle saints looked like the real eight battle saints. And the most terrifying thing was that the strength of these eight war saints was exactly the same as the previous eight war saints. What kind of secret technique is this? Are these clones? But how can clones have such terrifying strength? Seeing the eight war saints suddenly turn into eight, many cultivators shouted in surprise. For example, cultivators and monster gods who had stepped into the Emperor realm and above all had the ability to create clones. This was not unfamiliar to everyone, but clones could only have about 10% of the strength of the original body. However, the eight clones of the eight battle saints all contained the full power of the eight battle saints. This caused many people to be unable to understand how the eight battle saints were able to accomplish this. War divine body. This is the innate divine body of the eight war saints. Some people who knew the origin of the eight war saints knew why they could have eight clones. People with innate divine bodies and war divine bodies were born with 7 clones, and the strength of these 7 clones was exactly the same as the strength of the original body. Cultivators with war divine bodies were born stronger than ordinary people and could erupt with 8 times the strength at any time. Even among the countless innate divine bodies, the war divine body could be ranked in the top 20. Chu Feng Mian was no stranger to this kind of war divine body. The demon emperor had a similar war divine body, but it was a divine body ranked higher than the war divine body of the 8 war saints, the nirvana divine body. The nirvana body of the war saints, and again, which was more terrifying than the 8 war saints' 7 clones. The name of the 8 war saints was famous because of his war divine physique. However, with the passage of time, not many people had seen the 8 war saints fight with their full strength. Many people had forgotten this point. The war. S's, N and is. And. Seeing the war saints erupting with their full strength, the other experts of the 7 major sects discussed with each other. In their eyes, the battle was already over. The war saints' 7 clones attacked together with their original bodies. They condensed the wind of their fists and blasted at Chu Feng Mian. In an instant, they erupted with 8 times the strength of their original bodies and blasted down together, showing boundless killing intent. Die! The moment the fist came crashing down, the 8 battle saints all opened their mouths. Their voices seemed to have sealed Chu Feng Mian's fate. Is that so? Chu Feng Mian's lips curled into a cold smile. Looking at the 8 battle sages attacking together, the aura on his body changed abruptly. Blood chi that soared to the heavens exploded outwards. In that instant, Chu Feng Mian's aura became completely different. The 129,600 crystals in his body had already completely transformed. However, Chu Feng Mian had been suppressing their power in order to prevent the 8 battle saints from detecting any abnormalities. At this moment, the power that was suppressed in the 129,600 beads was completely released. Endless blood chi soared to the sky, and this blood chi seemed to have dyed Chu Feng Mian blood red. In this soaring blood chi, there was an incomparably ancient power. This power seemed to have come from the most ancient expert of the immortal true body. It was ancient and powerful. His immortal true body had devoured a large amount of blood chi during the battle with the 8 war saints. Now, its strength had skyrocketed countless times. Boom! Countless eyes were fixed on Chu Feng Mian the moment they sensed the surging blood chi. Even the immortal generals were somewhat shocked. The soaring blood chi was about to drown them. They couldn't imagine that Chu Feng Mian could erupt with such terrifying power at this moment. The blood chi that soared to the sky shrouded Chu Feng Mian's body. Suddenly, Chu Feng Mian moved his body and took a step forward. He faced the war saints and suddenly threw out a punch. Boom! This punch was accompanied by the roar of a dragon. The rolling dragon's might, the ancient profound wail, and the power of devouring heaven were all added to this punch. This punch swept away everything in its path. The fist wind of the war saints was mercilessly crushed. Among the war saints, a few of the war saints had to bear such a huge force. Their bodies swelled up, and in the next moment, they were shattered. Among the 7 incarnations of the war saints, 4 of them had to bear the huge force and exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. The blood essence that filled the sky was completely devoured by the devouring heaven force. The 8 battle saints possessed the Great War divine body, and each of their clones possessed the same level of strength as their original body. With a single punch, 4 of the 8 battle saints' clones were instantly killed. This was almost equivalent to killing 4 immortal king experts in one go. Although the war saint had cultivated the Great War divine body, the strength of any of his incarnations was slightly weaker than a true immortal king expert. However, 2 of his incarnations were almost comparable to a true immortal king expert. When the 4 incarnations attacked together, most of the immortal king experts could only push them away. They didn't dare to resist. But now, Chu Feng Mian defeated the war saints with a single punch. Among the 7 incarnations of the war saints, 4 of them were killed by Chu Feng Mian. The incarnations of the Great War divine body were the same as the incarnations of the Nirvana divine body. Once they died, there was no possibility of them being condensed again. Chapter 2263. It could be said that the power of Chu Fengmian's punch had crippled half of the 8 battle saints' strength. No matter how many opportunities the 8 battle saints obtained in the future, they would not be able to make up for the loss. What? The 8 battle saints were defeated. 4 incarnations were killed by a single punch? How is that possible? This is the Great War divine physique, 8 times the battle strength. How could it be defeated? How did this kid's strength suddenly become so terrifying? Originally, many of the experts present thought that once the 8 battle saints attacked with their full strength, it would be enough to determine the victory and Chu Fengmian would undoubtedly die. But they never expected that the situation would be reversed in the blink of an eye. The 8 battle saints who were brimming with confidence a moment ago had actually become so miserable in an instant. The might of Chu Fengmian's punch had destroyed 4 of his incarnations. His remaining 3 incarnations and his original body had all suffered serious injuries. Now, he was dripping with blood and in an incomparably miserable state. Defeating 8 battle saints with the strength of his physical body? Am I crazy? How could anyone do that? Qian Yun's mouth was wide open as he shouted loudly. Even he was almost scared to death when he saw this scene. This was the 8 battle saints who had the Great War divine physique. Once the 7 incarnations of the 8 battle saints came out, they were almost invincible in a head-on confrontation. No one should be able to contend with them. But now, Chu Fengmian had defeated the 8 battle saints head-on. The countless essence blood of the 4 incarnations was instantly devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique and poured into Chu Fengmian's body. The essence blood of the 4 incarnations was almost equivalent to the essence blood of 4 true immortal kings. It was the first time Chu Fengmian had devoured the essence blood of an immortal king expert. As it poured into his body, Chu Fengmian immediately felt an incomparably enormous immortal power. Every immortal king expert possessed incredible strength. In the extraterritorial starry sky, the strongest expert in a second-grade starfield was only an immortal general, and the strongest was only an immortal marquis. An immortal king expert was an invincible existence that could rule hundreds or thousands of starfields. Even in the 3 great saint realms and the 9 domains of heaven, an immortal king was an important figure, an existence that could control a region. Immortal king. The 2 words immortal king represented the king of immortals. The immortal kings of the various sects of the 9 regions had all been nurtured over the course of 10,000 years. Chu Fengmian killed the 4 clones of the 8 war saints, which was equivalent to killing 4 true immortal kings. Their essence blood poured into Chu Fengmian's body and was instantly devoured by the 129,600 immortal crystals. In the battle with the 8 war saints, these 129,600 immortal crystals had been broken and reformed dozens of times. Every time they were reformed, the power contained within each immortal crystal was even more terrifying. Vaguely, Chu Fengmian's immortal true body transformed again and was about to enter the fourth level. The essence blood he had accumulated from killing Taoist North Sword, Human Demon Sovereign, and the others had long been depleted. Now, these immortal crystals lacked the essence blood and immortal energy to devour. This time, after killing the 4 clones of the 8 war saints, their essence blood poured into Chu Fengmian's body. These immortal crystals thirsted for essence blood and immortal energy and began to devour it frantically. After devouring a large amount of essence blood, each immortal crystal began to swell. Suddenly, an inscription was engraved in the center of each immortal crystal. This inscription was formed after devouring more than 90% of the essence blood of the 4 clones of the 8 war saints. The moment this inscription was formed, Chu Fengmian felt that his strength had taken another step forward. His immortal true body had transformed again and reached the 4th level. This inscription contained an endless amount of power that continuously poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian carefully observed this inscription and found that it seemed to be a diagram. Chu Fengmian had never seen this diagram before. Even after inheriting the Supreme Sword Sect's inheritance, the Sword Emperor Crown's devouring power. In his memory, there was no record of this diagram. Could it be that this immortal true body is even older than the Supreme Sword Sect? Chu Fengmian flipped through the memories of the Sword Emperor Crown, but found nothing. His eyes revealed some shock. The Supreme Sword Sect was already the most ancient sword sect. It was tyrannical for a period of time. In the era when the primordial era was shattered and the 9 regions were condensed, it became an invincible overlord. There was very little information about the origins of the immortal true body in the Supreme Sword Sect's inheritance. It was very likely that this immortal true body was even older than the Supreme Sword Sect. It was even older than the Supreme Sword Sect. That was the primordial era, the era when the 100 races dominated. The origin of the immortal true body might be much older than Chu Fengmian imagined. The power of this inscription has not reached its limit. It seems that it can still devour more essence blood to condense the inscription. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a bit of heat. He felt that the power of this inscription had not reached its limit. As long as more inscriptions were condensed, Chu Fengmian's strength could still increase further. Chu Fengmian's current realm was restricted by the power of heaven and earth of the 9 regions. He could not descend the celestial tribulation and could only be trapped in the half-step celestial realm. Unless Chu Fengmian left the 9 regions, he could not go any further. Chu Fengmian did not have a solution. However, when the immortal true body transformed again and reached the 4th level of the immortal true body, the inscription condensed could actually increase Chu Fengmian's strength. The power emitted from the inscription alone increased Chu Fengmian's strength by about 30%. Given Chu Fengmian's current strength, this kind of increase was simply amazing. Moreover, the power of the inscription was far from simple. Chu Fengmian felt that he could control the power of the inscription and use the power contained in it at any time. I reached the 4th level of the immortal true body. Chu Fengmian felt a bit of joy in his eyes as he felt the new power. Since reaching the 3rd level of the immortal true body, Chu Fengmian had been looking for a way to break through to the 4th level, but the result was very little. Now, in the battle with the 8 war saints, Chu Fengmian directly reached the 4th level of the immortal true body. Fighting with the strong was indeed the fastest way to improve one's strength. More importantly, Chu Fengmian killed 4 incarnations of the 8 war saints and obtained the essence blood of 4 immortal kings. That was why he condensed the inscription with the essence blood, which was precisely the transformation of the immortal true body. Chapter 2264. Moreover, the inscription was far from reaching its limit. The blood essence of experts above the immortal lord level could be used to form inscriptions. As long as Chu Fengmian killed more experts and obtained their blood essence, his strength could be further improved. Chu Fengmian looked in the direction of the 8 battle saints. Although Chu Fengmian had killed 4 incarnations of the 8 battle saints, he still had 3 incarnations left. These 3 incarnations all contained blood essence that was comparable to an immortal king. After killing these 3 incarnations, Chu Fengmian could use the blood essence within them to condense more inscriptions. This time, Chu Fengmian had no intention of letting anyone from the 7 major sects go. The moment he looked at the 8 battle saints, killing intent surged in his eyes. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian made his move. His figure flickered as he chased after the 8 battle saints. This was the true body of the 8th war saint. His remaining 3 avatars had also suffered significant injuries. Seeing Chu Fengmian chasing after them, the 8 battle saints' expression changed and he shouted loudly. "Why aren't you making your move?" Hearing the shout of the 8 battle saints, many experts of the 7 major sects woke up from their daze. The scene just now had shocked them too much. Even the immortal kings were stunned for a moment. After hearing the shout of the 8 battle saints, they came back to their senses. Suddenly, several figures attacked, bursting out several immortal techniques and bombarding Chu Fengmian. They would not sit idly by and watch the 8 battle saints be killed by Chu Fengmian. In an instant, Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man all attacked together, performing countless immortal techniques to block Chu Fengmian's path. Now, they could no longer care about the dignity of immortal kings and attacked together. The moment the 3 immortal kings attacked, the immortal techniques they burst out were the killing moves that they had accumulated for a long time. The 3 of them joined forces, planning to kill Chu Fengmian in one blow. Good timing. Seeing the 3 of them joining hands, Chu Fengmian's face didn't show any signs of nervousness or fear. Instead, he revealed a bit of excitement. 2 spiritual swords condensed in his hands. Suddenly, he slashed out with his sword. Boom! 2 streaks of sword light slashed down. The power contained in this sword light was much more terrifying than before. After attaining the 4th level of the immortal true body, Chu Fengmian's strength was further enhanced. The power of his swordsmanship was far greater than before. These 2 sword arts were supreme sword arts of the High Sword School. They were immortal emperor sword arts. Chu Fengmian's sword light was enough to destroy a continent. As the 2 sword lights slammed down, the countless immortal arts unleashed by the 3 immortal kings were all shattered by the sword lights. In the next moment, the 2 sword lights were aimed directly at Ying Qianzhua and the other 2. This brat's strength has grown even stronger. How is this possible? How can his strength improve so quickly in such a short period of time? The expressions of Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun and the others changed drastically when they saw the 2 sword lights slashing towards them. They could see that the power that Chu Fengmian had unleashed this time was much stronger than when he had faced the 8 battle saints. In such a short period of time, Chu Fengmian's strength had improved further, which was somewhat unimaginable to them. For experts at their level, they might not be able to improve their strength even if they cultivated in seclusion for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. However, Chu Fengmian was getting stronger almost every moment. This brat must have some kind of secret technique. We can't delay any longer. Ying Qianzhua looked at Chu Fengmian with fear in his eyes. He could sense that Chu Fengmian's strength would become even more terrifying with each passing minute. Qian Yun and the white-haired elder had the same idea as Ying Qianzhua. Buzz! Thousands of phantoms appeared beside Ying Qianzhua. Each of these phantoms looked like the real Ying Qianzhua, but they also looked like pure phantoms. It was hard to tell whether they were real or fake. At the moment when these thousands of phantoms appeared, the spiritual sword in Ying Qianzhua's hand suddenly moved. He slashed down with his sword. These thousands of phantoms all gathered on the tip of his sword. In an instant, it was as if thousands of swords were slashing down at the same time. Thousand-edge phantom sword. The strongest sword of the phantom sword technique slashed down with a loud bang. Ying Qianzhua originally wanted to capture Chu Fengmian alive. He was very curious about Chu Fengmian's secrets. But now, after Chu Fengmian defeated the 8 battle saints and became even stronger, he completely gave up on this idea. Compared to Chu Fengmian's secrets, Chu Fengmian himself was the most terrifying. He did not want to let Chu Fengmian continue to grow. So, he suddenly used his killer move. The strongest sword of the phantom sword technique burst out and slashed down at Chu Fengmian. Not only Ying Qianzhua, but Qian Yun and the white-haired elder also did the same. Qian Yun's body became incomparably huge. He reached a height of 100 meters and became the giant in the center of the battlefield. His body showed a kind of glazed color. The glazed light gathered on his fist. Then, he suddenly punched out. At this moment, Jianwang also used all his trump cards and displayed his most powerful technique. The white-haired elder did the same. Behind him, an ancient door opened. What emerged from it was the scene of the ancient Baron's continent hundreds of millions of years ago. Inside this ancient door, as the white-haired youth extended his hand and clawed, a giant beast that was 10,000 feet in size was caught in his hand. This 1,000-feet-long giant beast had the shape of a tiger, but its entire body was blood red. It contained an enormous amount of blood qi, and within the blood qi, there was also an endless amount of murderous intent. When the giant beast was pulled out of the ancient door by the white-haired elder, many demon gods were shocked. Some of them recognized the giant beast. Blood ghost beast. It's a terrifying wild beast formed from the blood essence of a demon god. This is a blood ghost beast that is close to the immortal king realm. It's said that the founder of the ancient barons sect had a great connection with the supreme giant of the ancient barons era. He left a mark in the ancient barons era that could open the door and borrow the power of the wild beasts of the ancient barons era. This rumor is actually true. Opening the door of the ancient barons era and borrowing the power of the living beings from hundreds of millions of years ago was simply a myth. Although there had always been such a rumor, not many people believed it. However, when they saw the white-haired elder in action, they realized that the rumor was actually true. Chapter 2265. Among the 7 major sects, the most unfathomable was the desolate ancient sect. This 1,000-meter-long blood ghost was directly pulled out of the desolate ancient gate by the white-haired old man, unable to resist at all. The founder of the desolate ancient sect had left his mark on the desolate ancient overlord. Any desolate beast that was summoned could not resist. Go! The white-haired elder ordered after the 1,000-foot-long blood ghost was pulled out, pointing at Chu Fengmian. The 1,000-foot-long blood ghost roared, burning its blood essence and pouncing at Chu Fengmian. The 1,000-foot-long blood ghost was a terrifying desolate beast born from powerful blood essence and chaotic energy of the desolate ancient era. Burning its blood essence was a desperate move. The moment it attacked, it was comparable to a true immortal king realm expert. It was willing to give up its life and go all out. Even an immortal monarch would have to be careful in the face of an immortal king. Otherwise, he might be killed. Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man all brought out their trump cards and bombarded Chu Fengmian with attacks. On the other side, Chu Fengmian was also controlling his sword. A dazzling purple sword light soared into the sky, leaving behind purple crystals wherever it passed. The amethyst sword art. Among all the sword arts Chu Fengmian had obtained from the Shang Sword Sect's library, the amethyst sword art was the one that improved Chu Fengmian the most. It was also the sword art that Chu Fengmian had studied the most. The amethyst sword art was no longer the amethyst sword art created by the amethyst immortal venerable. It now contained Chu Fengmian's sword Dao and his understanding of the sword Dao from the ancient books. The power of a slash was above that of an immortal emperor's immortal technique. At this moment, Chu Fengmian's body emitted a faint purple light. The power of the amethyst golem race was added to Chu Fengmian's body, and he slashed out with the sword. Boom! The purple sword light collided with the combined power of Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired elder. The moment it collided, the purple sword light shattered. The 3 immortal kings were now using their strongest killing moves. Even though Chu Fengmian had stepped into the 4th level of the immortal true body and his strength had improved by leaps and bounds, he still couldn't defeat them. The moment the purple sword light was shattered, Chu Fengmian suffered a tremendous force. His body was pushed back for dozens of miles. The tyrannical force almost caused Chu Fengmian's body to explode. If it was any other immortal king expert, they would have been directly torn apart by that terrifying force just now. Chu Fengmian's immortal true body had transformed into the 4th level of immortal true body. The immortal true body's transformation had an immortal body's immortal body. Overall, each immortal crystal had become much sturdier. It also contained an extremely powerful recovery power. Even after withstanding such a huge force, it still couldn't kill Chu Fengmian. He didn't die. When Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man saw that Chu Fengmian was still able to stabilize his body despite being forced back, their eyes were filled with astonishment. The three of them had unleashed their full strength and used all their trump cards. However, they had only managed to push Chu Fengmian back temporarily. They hadn't managed to kill Chu Fengmian. They hadn't even managed to destroy Chu Fengmian's flesh. Obviously, they were not satisfied with the result. The three immortal kings joined forces to deal with a warrior who was half a step away from the celestial realm. If this news were to spread, they would be the laughing stock for thousands of years. Kill! Don't give this kid a chance to breathe. In an instant, Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man acted once more. They wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, ruthlessly exterminating him, not allowing him to devour anything. A little chance to breathe. The sword light, the fist wind, and the blood ghost beast all rushed toward Chu Fengmian. You want to kill me? When Chu Fengmian saw the three figures rushing over, his eyes revealed a bit of cold killing intent. Just now was just a warm-up. Now it's the official start. You guys are the first to die under this move. It's your honor. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he suddenly took a step forward. Facing Ying Qianzhua and the other two, Chu Fengmian faced them head-on again. Is Chu Fengmian crazy? Does he really think he can fight three immortal kings head-on? At this time, instead of avoiding the attack, he is taking the initiative to fight head-on. Is he courting death? Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, many of the onlookers did not understand what Chu Fengmian was thinking. Ying Qianzhua and the other two were now at the peak of their strength. They were going to use all their strength to kill Chu Fengmian. If it was anyone else, they would have thought to avoid the brunt of this attack. But Chu Fengmian exceeded everyone's expectations. He took the initiative to meet the attack again. Seeing that the killing moves of the three immortal kings were about to bombard Chu Fengmian's body. Under countless shocked gazes, a wave of demonic will erupted from Chu Fengmian's body. Hiss! 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 The demonic will emerged from Chu Fengmian's body in an endless stream. Under the spread of the demonic will, Chu Fengmian's body was changing. His body and skin showed a bronze color. This bronze color appeared on a person's body, but it was not abrupt. Instead, it was as if it was created by heaven and earth. On this bronze skin, there were flames burning. At first glance, Chu Fengmian looked like a bronze-skinned flame giant. Every move of this bronze-skinned flame giant was filled with demonic will. From his back, the monstrous demonic will turned into a pair of demonic wings that covered the sky. The whole deep part of the void was filled with demonic will. Even some of the top powers were unable to dispel the demonic will around them. This place seemed to have become an eternal demonic domain. No one could dispel the demonic will. This is demonization. This person is a demonic cultivator. Looking at the sudden change in Chu Fengmian, countless experts were stunned. They almost blurted out the word demonization. The change in Chu Fengmian's body was almost exactly the same as the Six Paths Demon Sect's demonization secret technique. Moreover, the demonic will exuding from Chu Fengmian's body was even more terrifying than the Six Paths Demon Sect's supremacies. Demonization. Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man stared at Chu Fengmian's transformation. Their expressions changed slightly. Chapter 2266. The demonization secret skill was the most powerful demonic secret skill in the 6 demon sects. Once demonized, one's strength would increase by 2 or 3 times in a short time. Therefore, no one was willing to provoke the experts of the 6 demon sects. Once demonized, even a martial artist or a demon god of a higher realm would be in danger. They didn't expect Chu Fengmian to demonize at this time. They couldn't tell the identity of the giant demonic god that Chu Fengmian had transformed into. However, the boundless demonic will on it showed that it was definitely a demonic god. The demonic will was so strong that it might even be an invincible giant in the ancient demonic clan. This man has cultivated demonic cultivation methods? Even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, he couldn't have learned so many cultivation methods. Ing Qianzhua, Qianyun, and the old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion cursed in their hearts. The bloodline power that Chu Fengmian displayed could be explained by chance. However, his sword principle couldn't be achieved without hundreds of years of hard work. Even Ing Qianzhua, as the Phantom Sword Master and one of the Sword Masters of the Tianjian sect, who had inherited the invincible sword principle of the Tianjian sect, had a high status. However, he dared not say that his understanding of sword principle was better than Chu Fengmian's. It was already shocking that he could have such amazing sword principle at such a young age. However, Chu Fengmian had even displayed the demonization secret skill. The demonization secret skill was the most profound demonic cultivation method in the 6 demon sects. Only demons who had cultivated demonic cultivation methods for hundreds of years were qualified to display it. Even in the 6 demon sects, there were very few experts who were qualified to display the demonization secret skill. Moreover, all of them were old demons who had been cultivating demonic cultivation methods for hundreds of years. Chu Fengmian's display of the demonization secret skill startled everyone. Even Chu Fengmian himself was shocked. He didn't expect that he would suddenly demonize. However, when he saw his changed appearance, Chu Fengmian's mind suddenly became clear. He suddenly understood why Chu Fengmian had transformed into a giant with burning bronze skin. This was the appearance of the bronze heavenly demon, one of the 10 heavenly demons. Speaking of the relationship between Chu Fengmian and the bronze sky demon, when Chu Fengmian first formed his undying true body and turned his body into a crystal, it was because Chu Fengmian obtained the bones of the 10 sky demons. Using the godly tree to refine the bronze celestial demon skeleton, Chu Fengmian was able to form his half-step undying body. Although the half-step immortal true body was only the beginning, it could be said that Chu Fengmian had embarked on this path because of the bronze heavenly demon. Chu Fengmian had suspected that the bronze heavenly devil was one of the 10 heavenly devils, an invincible existence on the level of the devil ancestor. It was even stronger than the current immortal emperor, so it was impossible for its remains to be so weak. Now, it seemed that the bronze heavenly demon skeleton had previously been integrated into Chu Fengmian's body, but the power within had quieted down. Given Chu Fengmian's strength at that time, it was impossible for him to detect the existence of this power. Now that Chu Fengmian had formed the 4th level of the immortal true body, the inscription he had formed was actually formed by the power of the bronze heavenly demon. Now, Chu Fengmian activated the power of the inscription, causing all the power of the bronze heavenly demon to erupt. The billowing demonic will changed his body into the appearance of the bronze heavenly demon, which indeed looked very similar to the 6 paths demon sect's demonification secret technique. However, Chu Fengmian knew that although his transformation was very similar to demonification, there was a world of difference between the two. Once the demonification secret technique was activated, it could affect one's mind and even cause one to turn into a demon. Therefore, the experts of the 6 paths demon sect did not dare to use the demonification secret technique under normal circumstances, for fear of being affected by the demonic will contained within. However, the demonic will that Chu Fengmian released now came from the inscription he had formed. In fact, it was also his power, which he could activate at will without being affected. This transformation was much more profound than the demonification secret technique. However, now, Ing Qianzhua, Qianyun, the white-haired old man and the others all thought that Chu Fengmian was using the demonification secret technique, which could be used to hide the secret of the immortal true body. The higher the level of the immortal true body, the more Chu Fengmian realized that the origin of the immortal true body was definitely more profound than what was recorded in the ancient books. Even the power of the bronze heavenly demon could be used by Chu Fengmian now. If this news were to spread, the overlords of the demonic Tao who had been hiding for tens of thousands of years would come out to capture Chu Fengmian and interrogate him for his secrets. Chu Fengmian did not think that he was invincible now. The extraterrestrial starry sky was vast and boundless. Who knew if there were old antiques who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years who were cultivating in seclusion? Chu Fengmian was not willing to reveal this secret. Now that he had the demonification secret technique as a cover, it could not be better. Even if others wanted to explore the mystery of the demonification secret technique, they would deal with the 6 paths demon gate instead of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian activated the power of the inscription. The moment his body transformed into the bronze heavenly demon, he felt that his power had increased by 4 to 5 times. This kind of increase was much more powerful than the real demonification secret technique. The bronze heavenly demon was one of the 10 heavenly demons, the ancestor of the devil Tao. Even though the inscription Chu Fengmian had condensed only contained a part of the bronze heavenly demon's power, it was still extremely terrifying when it was activated. Chu Fengmian took a step forward. Looking at Ing Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man who were rushing towards him, he sneered. His face was somewhat ferocious. Suddenly, he thrust out both of his swords. The tip of his swords contained billowing demonic flames. The power of the bronze heavenly demon burst out along with Chu Fengmian's swords. It was strange to say that today was the first time Chu Fengmian used the power of the bronze heavenly demon. However, he felt an incomparably familiar feeling. He did not need to familiarize himself with it. It naturally condensed in Chu Fengmian's swords. Boom! The tip of the sword contained Chu Fengmian's supreme sword principle and the terrifying power of the bronze heavenly demon. I'll let you have a taste of the power of the supreme heavenly demon. Chu Fengmian let out a hearty laugh as the tip of his sword swept downwards. In an instant, the power unleashed by Ing Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man was shattered by a single slash. Puff! The 3 figures were sent flying by the force of the sword. They spat out blood and the blood ghost beast was torn apart by the sword. Chapter 2267. This immortal king realm blood ghost was torn apart by the force of this sword, unable to resist at all. The blood ghost was a desolate beast born from blood essence. When it was torn apart, it turned into a blood mist that filled the sky. The blood mist contained the blood essence of desolate beasts, humans, demonic beasts, and many other ancient races. Chu Fengmian laughed heartily when he saw the blood mist. He immediately opened his mouth and activated the sky-devouring secret technique. All of the blood essence fell into Chu Fengmian's mouth and was devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique. Many of the blood essence contained in the blood ghost were extremely violent and poisonous. Therefore, even in the Desolation era, everyone knew that the blood ghost contained a lot of blood essence. However, even experts who lacked blood essence were unwilling to hunt the blood ghost. If he were to rashly devour the blood essence of the blood ghost, there would be no benefits at all. Instead, it would be a disaster. However, Chu Fengmian was not afraid. He had the bloodline of the sky-devouring beast, which had the power to devour heaven and earth. All the poison and demonic blood that fell into the sky-devouring secret technique were turned into incomparably pure energy and poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian felt that the blood essence contained in the blood ghost was almost comparable to the blood essence of 4 or 5 immortal kings. It was even more than the blood essence he had obtained from killing the 4 incarnations of the 8 war saints. The blood ghost beast was a desolate beast condensed from blood essence. Its strength came from the blood essence in its body, which was why it had such a robust amount of blood essence. With so much blood essence, Chu Fengmian could condense the second inscription. Inscription condensation. Devour. Chu Fengmian operated the power of his immortal true body. The blood essence of the blood ghost had just been refined by the sky-devouring secret technique, and the poison and demonic will were all dissolved. All the essence blood was condensed together and gradually turned into the shape of an inscription. This inscription looked very similar to the previous one. However, the amount of essence blood required to activate this inscription was twice as much as the previous one. The blood essence of the blood ghost had been used to condense the inscription, but it had only condensed in embryonic form. There were still many areas that were lacking. It seemed like it lacked essence blood and had not been completely condensed. However, although this was only a prototype, Chu Fengmian could feel that his power had improved once it entered the immortal true body. Even the flames on the body of the bronze heavenly demon burned even more vigorously. The power of the bronze heavenly demon had improved. The power of the bronze heavenly demon had always been hidden in Chu Fengmian's body, but Chu Fengmian was unable to use it. As for the inscription, it was able to utilize the power of the bronze heavenly demon for Chu Fengmian's use. Chu Fengmian even had a feeling that if he condensed more inscriptions, he could control all of the bronze heavenly demon's power in the future. This was equivalent to the power of an immoral emperor. However, Chu Fengmian also knew that in order to fully control all of the bronze heavenly demon's power, he would need to condense thousands of such inscriptions. He didn't even know how much essence blood he would need. Even if Chu Fengmian killed all the experts in the 9 domains, or even the entire world, and devoured their essence blood, he might not be able to condense so many inscriptions. After all, this was only the second inscription, but it already required the essence blood of at least 10 immortal kings. If he wanted to condense more inscriptions, he would need even more. Needless to say, the amount of essence blood he would need to condense more than 10 inscriptions would be an astronomical figure. However, Chu Fengmian wasn't greedy. As long as he condensed 4 or 5 inscriptions, his strength would advance by leaps and bounds. When he stepped into the immortal monarch realm, the 7 major sects would be vulnerable in front of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's eyes swept across the experts of the 7 major sections. Now, in Chu Fengmian's eyes, all the immortal kings present were clumps of essence blood. If he could kill all of them, he would definitely be able to condense the second inscription. He might even be able to condense the embryonic form of the third inscription. This gave Chu Fengmian another reason to kill all the experts of the 7 major sects on the spot. Die! Chu Fengmian coldly shouted a single word. His body suddenly moved. The pair of demonic wings on his back flapped, and his figure instantly chased after Ying Qianzhua, Qian Yun, and the white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion. This pair of devil wings didn't just look domineering. With each flap, Chu Fengmian's speed increased a lot. In an instant, he caught up with them. His eyes first looked at Ying Qianzhua, and suddenly, he slashed down with his sword. Boom! Ying Qianzhua had just escaped, but he didn't expect Chu Fengmian to catch up with him so quickly. The sword slashed down, and there was almost no time for him to react. The sword light slashed down on him. Ying Qianzhua's body was immediately cut in half, and his essence blood was rapidly devoured. This sword contained the power of heaven devouring. Those who were killed would be mercilessly devoured by the power of the heaven devouring secret technique. Ying Qianzhua didn't even have time to scream before his body was mercilessly devoured by the heaven devouring secret technique. Not even his bones were left. The power of his essence blood had become Chu Fengmian's nourishment and was integrated into the inscription. The empty space in the center of the second inscription was filled. As long as he killed 2 more immortal kings and devoured their essence blood, the second inscription in Chu Fengmian's immortal true body would be completely condensed. As for the 2 candidates, Chu Fengmian had already chosen them. They were Qian Yun and the white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion. Their expressions changed drastically when they saw Chu Fengmian killing Qianzhua in an instant. Their faces turned ghastly pale as they immediately cried out. Everyone, this man has become a demon. If we don't kill him now, the people of the 9 regions will be plunged into misery and suffering in the future. Everyone, please attack together. There was no need for the 2 of them to shout. On the side of the 7 major sects, the old poison master, the crescent moon discipline king, Huang Yuan, Bai Mu, and the people in the galaxy formed by the Dubhe Hall all stared at Chu Fengmian nervously. Suddenly, they attacked together. They could also see how terrifying Chu Fengmian was. He was no longer comparable to an ordinary immortal king. They gathered here today to kill Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian could survive today, they would be the ones to suffer. Whether it was the grudge between the Sword Dao sect and the 7 major sects, or the hatred of besieging Chu Fengmian today, it was already irreconcilable. Chapter 2268. At this moment, it was either you die or I die. No one would hold back anymore. The immortal energy that filled the sky turned into countless forces that bombarded Chu Fengmian. They gathered together and turned into an invincible divine light that slashed towards Chu Fengmian. The experts of the 7 major sects all attacked together at this moment. They exploded with their strongest power, wanting to kill Chu Fengmian in one move. It's useless no matter how many of you join forces. Break for me. Looking at the countless experts attacking at this moment, Chu Fengmian revealed a smile on his face. He slashed out with both swords that contained demonic flames. As the swords slashed out, the demonic flames filled the sky and swept down. The divine light that was condensed from the power of countless experts could not withstand the tremendous power when it collided with the sword. It shattered with a loud bang. Chu Fengmian faced the experts of the 7 major sects alone with one sword. He was not afraid at all. The power of his sword swept through everything. Under this sword, even the old poison master, the Crescent Moon Discipline King, and the others were forced to retreat. These immortal kings joined forces, but they were no match for Chu Fengmian in terms of strength. They were forced to retreat by this sword. Die! At this moment, Chu Fengmian's gaze fell on the desolate ancient sect's side. The white-haired elder with a youthful face. At the moment when everyone was forced to retreat, Chu Fengmian attacked. His figure was extremely fast. In an instant, he caught up with the white-haired elder with a youthful face. The elder's sword slashed down with a loud bang. Boom! 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 There was a barrier formed by the power of the ancient desolation protecting the old man. However, when Chu Fengmian's sword slashed down, the old man was struck by the power of the ancient desolation. The barrier formed by the power of the desolate ancient sect began to shatter crazily. It could not withstand the power of Chu Fengmian's sword. Desolate ancient sect. The elder with a youthful face faced the sword slashing down, but a strange smile appeared on his face. Just as Chu Fengmian approached, the jade bead in his hand suddenly flew out. The ancient power of the desolate ancient sect shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. There was a loud boom. This barbaric force shrouded Chu Fengmian's body, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. This force seemed to want to banish Chu Fengmian to the ancient desolation. It had been hundreds of millions of years since the primordial era. No matter who was exiled to the primordial era, it was impossible for them to withstand the passage of time. Time was the most ruthless of forces. How many famous invincible experts had died in the passage of time? It was impossible for anyone to survive for hundreds of millions of years. Being exiled to the desolate era was the only path left for them. The jade bead in the elder's hand was the desolate ancient bead. As one of the 4 supreme treasures of the desolate ancient sect, the most powerful thing about it was that it could open up the desolate ancient passageway and banish people into the desolate ancient sect. The power of the ancient desolate bead enveloped Chu Fengmian tightly. The space around Chu Fengmian started to shatter, forming a huge passageway. This passage contained a great attractive force that wanted to pull Chu Fengmian into the passage. The ancient desolate ancient bead can actually open up the desolate ancient passageway. Looking at the passageway that appeared behind Chu Fengmian, everyone felt a chill down their spine. Whoever was pulled into the desolate ancient passageway, even an immortal emperor would die. However, Chu Fengmian stood in front of the passageway without moving an inch. He looked at the passageway that appeared behind him and sneered coldly. Suddenly, he activated his strength and the demonic will erupted. The desolate ancient passageway was shattered by the vibrations, and cracks appeared on its surface. In the old man's hand, the desolate ancient bead was the same as the desolate ancient passageway that had been formed. Cracks had appeared on it. Even the ancient desolate ancient bead can't suppress this person's strength? When the old man saw the cracks appearing on the desolate ancient bead, his eyes were filled with anxiety as he shouted out loudly. "Everyone, lend me a hand." There was no need for the elder to devour. As soon as he spoke, the old poison master, Reverend Crescent Moon, and the others took action. In an instant, countless immortal energies were injected into the ancient desolate ancient bead in the elder's hand. In an instant, the power of the ancient bead skyrocketed. At the same time, the desolate ancient passageway behind Chu Fengmian became a lot bigger. In an instant, it covered Chu Fengmian completely. A great pulling force was about to pull Chu Fengmian into the passageway. The power of the desolate ancient bead is only SOSO. Just as Chu Fengmian's figure was about to be pulled into the desolate ancient passageway, a disdainful voice was heard. Behind Chu Fengmian, an incomparably huge figure appeared. This figure was 10,000 feet tall and stood upright. In an instant, it covered the entire desolate ancient passageway. No matter how hard the desolate ancient passageway tried to pull Chu Fengmian, it couldn't move Chu Fengmian at all. This incomparably huge figure was the divine tree. Chu Fengmian had killed countless experts and obtained countless opportunities. These benefits were all obtained by the divine tree. This divine tree was a symbiotic relationship with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had not used the power of the divine tree for a long time. Right now, the power of the divine tree was almost comparable to the huge divine tree that Chu Fengmian had seen in the divine tree secret realm. Although the size was far from the divine tree's, the power that it contained was quite different. As soon as the divine tree appeared, it completely blocked the desolate ancient passageway. The desolate ancient passageway was only 3 to 4 meters wide. In front of the divine tree, it was incomparably small. Moreover, when the divine tree appeared, it was rooted deep in the void. No matter how hard the desolate ancient passageway tried to devour it, it couldn't move Chu Fengmian or the divine tree. Now that you're done, it's my turn to attack. Chu Fengmian stood in front of the divine tree and looked at the crowd. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He suddenly drew his sword and slashed towards the white-haired old man. This white-haired old man's complexion was currently incomparably pale. In order to activate the ancient desolate pearl, he had practically exhausted all of his strength. When he saw Chu Fengmian charging towards him, his complexion was already deathly pale. He hurriedly picked up the ancient desolate pearl to defend himself. The desolate ancient pearl flew out and blocked in front of the white-haired old man in an attempt to block Chu Fengmian's slash. However, a shattering sound could be heard. The desolate ancient pearl shattered under Chu Fengmian's slash. The desolate ancient pearl that was already riddled with holes couldn't block Chu Fengmian's slash. Chapter 2269. Will help you. Seeing Chu Fengmian's sword slashing down, a river of stars suddenly appeared in front of the old man. There was a loud boom. The river of stars emitted the power of stars that filled the sky, turning into a cosmic star map that shrouded the old man. The river of stars was a secret technique that 3,000 disciples of Dub He Hall cast together. Chu Fengmian glanced over and saw the disciples of Dub He Hall through the river of stars. Third Supreme Elder, why aren't you entering the array? The voice of an old man was transmitted from the river of stars. It was one of the big shots of Dub He Hall. Hearing this, the old man's face immediately lit up with joy. He immediately entered the cosmic star map and his figure disappeared without a trace. People of Dub He Hall, I let you go last time. How dare you stop me today? Seeing the river of stars shrouding the old man, Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with anger. Because of some things in his previous life, Chu Fengmian didn't have much hatred for Dub He Hall. When he left the Pure Land Buddhist temple last time, he also let the disciples of Dub He Hall go. But this time, there were still people from Dub He Hall who dared to interfere and stop Chu Fengmian. They really didn't know how to spell the word death. Chu Fengmian could let Dub He Hall go once, but it didn't mean that he would let them go a second time. It's just a cosmic star map. How dare you stop me? Break for me. Chu Fengmian flew in front of the cosmic star map. Suddenly, the sword in his hand moved. In an instant, the sword slashed 3,000 times, turning into 3,000 rays of sword chi and entering the cosmic star map. Every strand of sword chi he sent out seemed to be aimed at one of the stars. The 3,000 strands of sword chi struck the 3,000 stars with great precision. Ah! Countless screams were transmitted from the cosmic star map. In the cosmic star map, the stars were shattered. Each star represented a disciple of Dubhe Hall. At this moment, more than half of the 3,000 stars were shattered. Almost 2/3 of the Alpha Hall disciples were directly killed by this sword. After losing 2/3 of the array eyes, the universe 1,000-star atlas could no longer be maintained. In the next moment, the universe star atlas began to collapse. How do you know the secrets of the universe's 1,000-star atlas? A voice of disbelief was emitted from the star map that was about to shatter. It belonged to the great leader of the Sky Pivot Hall who had spoken to protect the old man. His tone was filled with incomparable shock. One of the strongest formations in Sky Pivot Hall, the universe of 1,000 stars diagram, had actually been destroyed so easily by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's 3,000 streaks of sword chi had accurately found 3,000 of the formation eyes. This could only be done by someone who had a deep understanding of the universe's 1,000-star chart. What? Back then, you were the ones who begged me to help you reconstruct the formation. Now, you're asking me how I know its secrets? Chu Fengmian's face was incomparably calm when he heard this voice. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire galaxy suddenly fell silent. It was as if the giant who had spoken was extremely shocked. Chu Jianbai? You're Chu Jianbai? How are you still alive? An incomparably shocked voice suddenly rang out. This voice was much clearer than before. It was the voice of a middle-aged man. I was wondering who it was. So it's the Mizar Hall Master. The moment he heard the middle-aged man's voice, Chu Fengmian could also tell his origin. He sneered. I thought that you guys would know your place after I gave you a warning last time. Looks like I've underestimated your Sky Pivot Hall. You're really Chu Jianbai? Hearing Chu Fengmian call out his name, the Sky Splitter Hall Master was shocked. Even the desolate ancient pearl can't suppress this person's strength? The old man with white hair and a youthful face saw the cracks that appeared on the desolate ancient pearl. His eyes were filled with anxiety as he loudly shouted. Everyone, lend me a hand. There was no need for the old man with white hair and a youthful face to speak. The old poison master, the crescent moon Shakyamuni and the others all took action together. In an instant, countless immortal energy was poured into the desolate ancient pearl in the old man's hand. In an instant, the power of the desolate ancient pearl skyrocketed. At the same time, the desolate ancient passage behind Chu Fengmian became a lot bigger. In an instant, it completely enveloped Chu Fengmian within. A huge pulling force was about to pull Chu Fengmian into the passage. The power of the desolate ancient pearl is only SOSO. Just as Chu Fengmian's figure was about to be pulled into the desolate ancient passage, a disdainful voice suddenly rang out. An incomparably huge figure appeared behind Chu Fengmian. This figure was 10,000 feet tall and stood indomitable. In an instant, it completely covered the desolate ancient passage. No matter how the desolate ancient passage tried to pull Chu Fengmian, it couldn't move Chu Fengmian at all. This incomparably huge figure was the Divine Tree. Chu Fengmian had killed countless experts and obtained countless opportunities. These benefits were all obtained by the Divine Tree. This Divine Tree was originally a symbiotic relationship with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had not used the power of the Divine Tree for a long time. Right now, the power of the Divine Tree was almost comparable to the huge Divine Tree that Chu Fengmian had seen in the Divine Tree Secret Realm. Although the size was far from the Divine Tree's, the power that it contained was quite different. As soon as the Divine Tree appeared, it completely blocked the desolate ancient passage. The desolate ancient passage at its widest was only 3 to 4 meters wide. In front of the Divine Tree, it was incomparably small. Moreover, when the Divine Tree appeared, it was rooted deep in the void. No matter how the desolate ancient passage tried to devour it, it couldn't move Chu Fengmian or the Divine Tree. You guys are done. It's my turn to attack. Chu Fengmian stood in front of the Divine Tree and looked at everyone present. His eyes flashed with killing intent. Suddenly, he drew his sword and slashed towards the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man's face was incomparably pale. In order to activate the desolate ancient pearl, he had almost exhausted all of his strength. Seeing Chu Fengmian slashing towards him, his face was ashen. He quickly took up the desolate ancient pearl to block the attack. The desolate ancient pearl flew out and blocked in front of the white-haired old man in an attempt to block Chu Fengmian's sword. However, a shattering sound was heard. The desolate ancient pearl shattered under Chu Fengmian's sword. The desolate ancient pearl that was already riddled with holes couldn't block Chu Fengmian's sword at all. Chapter 2270. However, Chu Fengmian's aptitude had already reached an extremely terrifying level. In the entire history of the 9 regions, there weren't many people who could compare with the current Chu Fengmian. This kind of contrast made people feel somewhat incredulous. His appearance, aptitude, and aura are completely different from Chu Jianbai's. The Mizar Palace master stared at Chu Fengmian. His gaze seemed to be able to see through everything about Chu Fengmian. He couldn't believe that Chu Fengmian was actually that trash Chu Jianbai. However, from Chu Fengmian's tone, he seemed to have returned to 10,000 years ago. In his eyes, the two figures began to match. It doesn't matter if this brat is Chu Jianbai or not. Once we capture him and search his memories, all of his secrets will be made public. There's no need to listen to his tricks. The old poison master suddenly snorted coldly. As soon as his words left his mouth, the old poison master's body moved. Purple miasma burst out from his body. The purple miasma covered the sky and covered the earth. Seeing the old poison master take action, everyone present retreated. The old poison master's poison technique had already reached an extremely terrifying level. No one was willing to be infected by that kind of poison at this time. These clouds of poisonous miasma shrouded Chu Fengmian. Within this poison miasma, the old poison master's body continuously flickered. A purple color had actually appeared on his palm. Within this purple color, there seemed to be many potent poisons flowing within it. 10,000 Poison Divine Palm. The strongest immortal technique of the myriad poison divinity. Only by condensing 10,000 types of poison can one cultivate an unparalleled poison technique. Seeing the palm that contained poison, some people suddenly shouted. It's said that the old poison master had bitterly cultivated the 10,000 Poison Divine Palm for over 10,000 years. However, he had never truly succeeded in cultivating it. I never expected that he would succeed this time. Once the 10,000 Poison Divine Palm is unleashed, no matter how strong one's physical body is or how powerful one's strength is, one will fall into an irrecoverable state after being contaminated by the poison. In the past, the 10,000 Poison Divine Sovereign used this 10,000 Poison Divine Palm to kill an immoral emperor. Kill an immoral emperor? That terrifying? Hearing that person's words, the surrounding crowd cried out in alarm. In the eyes of the crowd, immortal emperors were unparalleled existences that stood at the pinnacle of the immortal realm. This 10,000 Poisons Palm could actually kill an immortal emperor. Although the old poison master's 10,000 Poison Divine Palm has not been cultivated to the greater mastery stage, this person is not an immortal emperor. Once he gets infected by it, he will definitely die. An old man who was familiar with the 10,000 Poison Godly Palm said slowly. 10,000 Poisons Divine Palm. Chu Fengmian looked at the old poison master who was flickering in the miasma. His eyes were also very serious. Chu Fengmian had heard of the illustrious reputation of the 10,000 Poisons Palm, so he naturally didn't dare to underestimate it. Chu Fengmian took a step back and abruptly unsheathed his sword. A dazzling sword light containing devil flames slashed out, incinerating everything in its path. The poisonous miasma was completely ignited. Suddenly, the old poison master and the miasma rushed over. The power of the 10,000 Poisons Palm condensed in his palm. Suddenly, a palm descended from the sky and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. So what if the 10,000 Poisons Palm is powerful? With your strength, you won't be able to withstand a single blow from the outside. Chu Fengmian sneered and slashed out with his sword again. The sword light annihilated everything. The old poison master's body was cut in half by the sword. His body suddenly shattered and turned into a bloody mist. The old poison master couldn't even get close to Chu Fengmian before he was killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. Is that so? Almost at the moment when the old poison master's body was cut in half by the sword light, an old and gloomy voice suddenly sounded. A figure suddenly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. It was an old man. It was the old poison master. The old poison master didn't die. But why are there two old poison masters here? Seeing the old poison master suddenly appear behind Chu Fengmian, the minds of many people present were in chaos. Chu Fengmian had just killed the old poison master, but the old poison master suddenly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. It seemed like there were two old poison masters here. If the old poison master from before was a clone, it shouldn't be possible for a bloody mist to appear after the clone was killed. The essence blood of the old poison master couldn't be faked. Second true body. This is the second true body. One of the elders suddenly spoke up. He had lived for tens of thousands of years and was very knowledgeable. He recognized why there were two old poison masters here. Second true body. The second true body was actually a type of secret incarnation technique. However, it was different from ordinary secret incarnation techniques. The second true body didn't condense an incarnation, but a true body. It was to divide one's essence blood into two to condense a second true body. The strength of the second true body was exactly the same as the original. Therefore, although it was a secret incarnation technique, it was called the second true body. To condense a second true body, one had to divide one's strength into two. It was no different from going through a battle of life and death. Generally speaking, once a martial artist condensed a second true body, it meant that the martial artist was a demon god. In the future, unless he came across an amazing opportunity, there was no hope for him to advance any further. Only the experts of the older generation who had reached the peak and believed that they couldn't advance any further would use a secret technique to create a second true body. Once the second true body was created, it meant that one's strength couldn't advance any further. Therefore, although the secret technique of the second true body was passed down in the 9 regions, there were very few people who actually cultivated it. No one had thought that the old poison master would secretly condense a second true body. The old poison master was the oldest of the 9 regions experts. His lifespan was less than 10,000 years. It was almost impossible for him to advance any further. He was the only one who was willing to give up any hope of advancing any further and condense a second true body. He sacrificed his second true body to deal with this person. The old poison master is really ruthless. A martial artist muttered to himself. Now, the second true body had been completely destroyed by Chu Fengmian's sword. There was no possibility of it recovering. It was all to attract Chu Fengmian's attention. It seemed that even Chu Fengmian didn't realize that the old poison master had condensed a second true body. It was only when the old poison master's true body appeared behind him that he seemed to realize. However, it was already too late. Die! The old poison master's palm hit Chu Fengmian's back with a loud bang. In the palm of his hand, the 10,000 poisons divine palm's deadly poison was suddenly injected into Chu Fengmian's body along with the palm. Chapter 2271. Peng. The myriad poison palms suddenly hit Chu Fengmian's back. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't react in time. Just now, the old poison master's second body had completely attracted Chu Fengmian's attention. Chu Fengmian didn't even notice that the old poison master's original body had quietly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. As the myriad poison palm hit Chu Fengmian's back, Chu Fengmian's body abruptly took a few steps forward. His face became incomparably ugly as he suddenly felt countless toxins rushing into his body. The myriad poison palm at the great success stage contained toxins that could even poison an immortal emperor to death. Although the old poison master's myriad poison palm hadn't reached the great success stage, it was already in its embryonic form, which was enough to display half of its power. The toxins that could kill half of an immortal emperor was already a disaster for an immortal venerable, let alone Chu Fengmian, who was only a half-step celestial being. This kid is finished. Puff. Chu Fengmian took a step forward. His figure was somewhat erratic as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. The blood wasn't the usual blood red, but a kind of black. The toxins in the myriad poison palm had already invaded Chu Fengmian's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. Looking at Chu Fengmian's figure, the appearance of the bronze heavenly demon that he had transformed into became illusory. The burning flames on his body began to extinguish, and he seemed to be extremely weak. Myriad poison palm. The strongest immortal art of the myriad poison venerable. Only by condensing 10,000 types of toxins can one master this invincible poison technique. Seeing the palm that contained toxins, someone suddenly shouted. It's said that the old poison master has been cultivating this myriad poison palm for more than 10,000 years, but he still hasn't succeeded. I didn't expect that he would succeed this time. Once the 10,000 poison divine palm is unleashed, no matter how strong one's physical body is or how powerful one's strength is, one will fall into an irrecoverable state after being contaminated by the poison. In the past, the 10,000 poison divine sovereign used this 10,000 poison divine palm to kill an immortal emperor. Killed an immortal emperor? So terrifying. Hearing this person's words, the onlookers cried out in alarm. Immortal emperors, in the eyes of everyone, were invincible existences. They were at the pinnacle of immortals, high and mighty. This 10,000 poisons palm could actually kill an immortal emperor. Although the old poison master's 10,000 poison divine palm has not been cultivated to the greater mastery stage, this person is not an immortal emperor. Once he gets infected by it, he will definitely die. An old man said slowly as he was familiar with the 10,000 poison godly palm. 10,000 poisons divine palm. Chu Fengmian looked at the old poison master who was flickering in the miasma. His eyes were also very serious. Chu Fengmian had heard of the illustrious reputation of the 10,000 poisons palm, so he naturally didn't dare to underestimate it. Chu Fengmian took a step back and abruptly unsheathed his sword. A dazzling sword light that contained surging devil flames slashed out, incinerating everything in its path. The poisonous miasma was completely ignited. Suddenly, the old poison master and the miasma rushed over. The power of the 10,000 poisons palm condensed in his palm. Suddenly, a palm descended from the sky and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. So what if the 10,000 poisons palm is powerful? With your strength, you can't even withstand a single blow from me. Chu Fengmian sneered and slashed out with his sword again. The sword light annihilated everything. The old poison master's body was cut in half by the sword. His body suddenly shattered and turned into a bloody mist. The old poison master couldn't even get close to Chu Fengmian before he was killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. Is that so? Almost at the moment when the old poison master's body was cut in half by the sword light, an old and cold voice suddenly sounded. A figure suddenly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. It was an old man. It was the old poison master. The old poison master didn't die. But why are there 2 old poison masters here? Seeing the old poison master suddenly appear behind Chu Fengmian, the minds of many people present were in chaos. Just a moment ago, Chu Fengmian had killed the old poison master. But now, the old poison master suddenly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. It was as if there were 2 old poison masters. If the old poison master from before was a clone, it shouldn't be possible for a bloody mist to fill the sky after his clone was killed. The essence blood of the old poison master couldn't be faked. Second true body. This is the second true body. One of the elders suddenly spoke up. He had lived for tens of thousands of years and was very knowledgeable. He recognized why there were 2 old poison masters here. Second true body. The second true body was actually a type of secret incarnation technique. However, it was different from ordinary secret incarnation techniques. The second true body didn't condense an incarnation, but a true body. It was to divide one's essence blood into 2 to condense the second true body. The strength of the second true body was exactly the same as the original. Therefore, although it was a type of secret incarnation technique, it was called the second true body. In order to condense a second true body, one had to divide one's strength into two. It was no different from going through a battle of life and death. Generally speaking, once the second true body was condensed, it meant that the martial artist was a demon god. In the future, unless he came across an amazing opportunity, there was no hope for him to advance any further. Only the experts of the older generation who had reached the peak and believed that they couldn't advance any further would use a secret technique to create a second true body. Once the second true body was created, it almost meant that one's strength couldn't advance any further. Therefore, although the secret technique of the second true body was passed down in the 9 regions, there were very few people who actually cultivated it. No one had thought that the old poison master would secretly condense a second true body. The old poison master was the oldest among the experts of the 9 regions. His lifespan was less than 10,000 years. It was almost impossible for him to advance any further. Only he would be willing to give up the hope of advancing any further and condense a second true body. The old poison master is really ruthless to sacrifice his second true body to deal with this person. A martial artist muttered to himself. Now that the second true body had been completely destroyed by Chu Fengmian's sword, there was no possibility of it recovering. It was all to attract Chu Fengmian's attention. It seemed that even Chu Fengmian didn't realize that the old poison master had condensed a second true body. It was only when the old poison master's original body appeared behind him that he seemed to realize it. However, it was already too late. Die! The old poison master's palm hit Chu Fengmian's back with a loud bang. In the palm of his hand, the 10,000 poisons divine palm's deadly poison was suddenly injected into Chu Fengmian's body along with the palm. Chapter 2272. This glazed pagoda did not only contain the power of Jianwang alone. The 8 battle saints, the crescent moon Shakyamuni, the old man with white hair, and the experts of the 7 sects all poured their power into the glazed pagoda at this moment. Suddenly, the glazed pagoda pressed down on Chu Fengmian. Immortal! Chu Fengmian's face was extremely solemn. The power of the immortal true body in his body was pushed to the extreme. In an instant, the supreme sword qi that flew out all returned to Chu Fengmian's side, protecting him for a moment. Futile struggle. Jianwang sneered, looking at Chu Fengmian. In an instant, he activated the glazed pagoda and pressed down on Chu Fengmian's body. The layers of defense on Chu Fengmian's body were shattered by the glazed pagoda. Roar! The dragon roar and the beast roared. Behind Chu Fengmian, the black whale, the ancestral heavenly dragon, and the heaven-devouring beast, the 3 innate divine beasts, suddenly burst out and soared into the sky, charging straight at the descending glazed pagoda. The moment the 3 great innate divine beasts rushed into the sky, they actually faintly resisted the glazed pagoda that was pressing down on Chu Fengmian, preventing the glazed pagoda from going any further. What a powerful bloodline power! Jianwang, the 8 battle saints, and the others' faces were extremely cold. Chu Fengmian was now at the end of his life, but he was still able to resist the joint suppression of the experts of the 7 sects with his bloodline power. This was the best opportunity to suppress Chu Fengmian. This time, they had forced Chu Fengmian into such a state, and they had suffered heavy losses. The desolate ancient pearl of the old man with white hair, the 4 incarnations of the 8 battle saints, and the second real body of the old poison master. After paying such a heavy price, they would certainly not let Chu Fengmian break free and recover his strength today. Saint Monarch True Sovereign. All of a sudden, Jianwang let out a long roar. His essence blood within his body suddenly started to burn. The burning essence blood turned into an incomparably pure energy and poured into the glazed pagoda. The power of the glazed pagoda was suddenly pushed to the extreme. It vaguely suppressed the 3 innate divine beasts on Chu Fengmian's body. Ancient Human Emperor, enlighten the world. Halberd of the Human Emperor. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian roared and an ancient earthen jar appeared in his palm. Chu Fengmian wielded the human ruler's halberd and swung it out. The power of the human emperor's halberd swept through everything and bombarded the glazed pagoda. The glazed pagoda trembled, it was on the verge of shattering the pagoda. What is this? Extreme immortal weapon? Emperor Jar? Chu Fengmian, Yun suddenly Xian's, Chu Fengmian had used the Emperor Jar during the 9 Regions Genius competition. They also knew that Chu Fengmian had a broken Emperor weapon in his hand. However, the Emperor Jar back then was far less powerful than it was now. Being able to transform into the halberd of the human emperor meant that the jar had recovered a lot of its power. Even the glazed pagoda almost couldn't withstand the power of the halberd of the human emperor. As expected of the emperor weapon, Old Poison Master couldn't help but sigh when he saw the power of the halberd of the human emperor. They had also heard of the legend of the Emperor Jar. Now that Chu Fengmian had condensed the halberd of the human emperor and not the sword of the human emperor, it meant that the Emperor Jar was still in an incomplete state. Even an incomplete Emperor Jar had such heaven-defying power. He couldn't imagine the power of a complete Emperor Jar. An extreme immortal weapon was the king of immortal weapons, the emperor of immortal weapons. It was equivalent to an immortal emperor among immortals. Even some immortal emperors might not be able to control an extreme immortal weapon. Whoever obtained such an extreme immortal weapon would become an invincible existence in the same realm. The Emperor Jar, I want it. Suddenly, the moment the Emperor Jar appeared, the space above Chu Fengmian's head was torn apart. A crimson figure stepped out. The crimson figure held a giant sword and suddenly slashed at Chu Fengmian. Raging Flame Sword Emperor. The appearance of this figure caused many people to exclaim in surprise. This was another great figure, Raging Flame Sword Emperor, one of the 5 sword masters of the Tianjian sect. Raging Flame Sword Emperor had been famous for even longer than Ning Qianzhua, the Phantom Sword Master. He was an out-and-out antique of the Tianjian sect, one of the 5 sword masters. His strength was extremely terrifying. His aura had reached the limit of the Immortal King realm. He was only 1 step away from the 6th level of the 9 immortal realms. The Immortal Monarch realm was extremely terrifying. Many people didn't expect that this antique had been hiding in the void all this time. Even when Ning Qianzhua was killed by Chu Fengmian, Raging Flame Sword Emperor didn't make a move. He had been waiting for an opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian with a single strike. Now, the opportunity had finally arrived. Moreover, this time, Raging Flame Sword Emperor didn't only want to kill Chu Fengmian. He also wanted to seize the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hands. The giant sword slashed down, and the scorching waves of fire almost roasted Chu Fengmian alive. The scorching waves of fire were just a prelude. After that, the real terrifying power came. The sword slashed down, containing the power to split mountains and shatter seas. The sea-shattering divine sword. The highest quality immortal sword in the Tianjian sect. The power of the sea-shattering divine sword is said to be close to the power of an immortal weapon of extreme Tao. Looking at the giant sword in Raging Flame Sword Emperor's hand, many people were shocked. They could clearly feel the power of the sea-shattering divine sword. A sword to shatter the sea. The name of the sea-shattering divine sword wasn't an exaggeration. The moment it slashed down, Chu Fengmian felt that his body, along with the surrounding space, was being suppressed and torn to shreds. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's face was extremely cold. A jade talisman suddenly appeared in his hand. This jade talisman was the jade talisman of the ancient Desolation White Wolf. It had inherited the power of the ancient Desolation White Wolf's incarnation. Chu Fengmian didn't want to use this jade talisman at this time, but he didn't expect that he would be forced into such a dangerous situation. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, the 7 sects had used all their trump cards. Even an existence like Raging Flame Sword Emperor had suddenly made a move. Moreover, he had concealed his strength so deeply. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 2273. This glazed pagoda did not only contain the power of Qian Yun alone. The 8 battle saints, the Crescent Moon Shakyamuni, the old man with white hair, and the experts of the seven sects all poured their power into the glazed pagoda at this moment. Suddenly, the glazed pagoda pressed down on Chu Fengmian. Immortal. Chu Fengmian's face was extremely solemn. The power of the immortal true body in his body was pushed to the extreme. In an instant, the supreme sword qi that flew out all returned to Chu Fengmian's side, protecting him for a moment. Futile struggle. Qianyun sneered, looking at Chu Fengmian. In an instant, he activated the glazed pagoda and pressed down on Chu Fengmian's body. The layers of defense on Chu Fengmian's body were shattered by the glazed pagoda. Roar! The dragon roar and the beast roared. Behind Chu Fengmian, the black whale, ancestor Jianwang, and the heaven-devouring beast, the three great innate divine beasts' phantoms suddenly burst out and rushed towards the glazed pagoda that was descending. The moment the three great innate divine beasts' phantoms rushed into the sky, they actually faintly resisted the glazed pagoda that was pressing down on Chu Fengmian, preventing the glazed pagoda from moving any further. What a powerful bloodline power! Qianyun, the 8 battle saints, and the others' faces were extremely cold. Chu Fengmian was now at the end of his life, but he was still able to resist the joint suppression of the experts of the 7 sects with the power of his bloodline. This was the best opportunity to suppress Chu Fengmian. This time, they had forced Chu Fengmian into such a state, and they had suffered heavy losses. The desolate ancient pearl of the old man with white hair, the 4 incarnations of the 8 battle saints, and the second real body of the old poison master. After paying such a heavy price, they would certainly not let Chu Fengmian break free and recover his strength today. Saint King True Sovereign. All of a sudden, Qianyun let out a long roar. His essence blood within his body started to burn at this moment. The burning essence blood turned into an incomparably pure energy and poured into the glazed pagoda. The power of the lapis lazuli pagoda was pushed to the extreme. Vaguely, it was about to overpower the 3 connate divine beasts on Chu Fengmian's body. The ancient human emperor enlightened the world. Human emperor's halberd. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian roared and an ancient earthen jar appeared in his palm. Chu Fengmian wielded the human ruler's halberd and swung it out. The power of the human emperor's halberd swept through everything and bombarded the glazed pagoda. The glazed pagoda trembled and was on the verge of shattering under this attack. This is an extreme immortal weapon, the human emperor jar. Seeing the human emperor halberd in Chu Fengmian's hand, Qianyun suddenly shouted. Previously, Chu Fengmian had used the human emperor jar during the 9 regions genius competition. They also knew that Chu Fengmian had a broken human emperor's weapon. However, at that time, the jar's power was far from what it was now. Being able to transform into the human emperor's halberd meant that the jar had recovered a lot of its power. When the human emperor's halberd swept down, even the glazed pagoda almost couldn't withstand the force of the attack. As expected of a human emperor's weapon, the old poison master couldn't help but sigh when he saw the mighty power of the human emperor's halberd. They had also heard of the legends of the human emperor's jar. Now that Chu Fengmian had condensed the human emperor's halberd and not the final human emperor's sword, it meant that the jar was still in an incomplete state. Even an incomplete jar had such heaven-defying power. He couldn't even imagine the power of the complete emperor jar. An extreme immortal weapon was the king of immortal weapons, the emperor of immortal weapons. It was equivalent to an immortal emperor among immortals. Even some immortal emperors might not be able to control an extreme immortal weapon. Whoever obtained such an extreme immortal weapon would become an invincible existence in the same realm. The human emperor's jar, I want it. Suddenly, the moment the jar appeared, the space above Chu Fengmian's head was torn apart. A crimson figure stepped out of it. This crimson figure held a giant sword in his hand and suddenly slashed at Chu Fengmian. Raging Flame Sword Emperor. The appearance of this figure caused many people to exclaim in surprise. This was another big shot. He was one of the 5 sword lords of the Tianjian sect, Raging Flame Sword Emperor. Even when Ing Qianzhua was killed by Chu Fengmian, Raging Flame Sword Emperor didn't make a move. Instead, he waited until Chu Fengmian was at the end of his rope before suddenly making a move. Obviously, he planned to kill Chu Fengmian as soon as he made a move. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian with a thunderous momentum, not giving him any chance to escape. This disrupted Chu Fengmian's plan. He had to use the Jade Talisman in advance. Chu Fengmian gathered spiritual energy in his palm and was about to inject it into the Jade Talisman. Suddenly, a sword light fell from the sky. This sword light was like a river of stars. Its target wasn't Chu Fengmian, but Raging Flame Sword Emperor, who was above Chu Fengmian. Who is it? Raging Flame Sword Emperor didn't expect that someone would suddenly attack him at this time. For a moment, he was unprepared and was forced back by this sword. The sword light that he slashed at Chu Fengmian was also shattered. Where did this sword light come from? This sword light contains the power of stars. It seems to be a secret technique of Dubhe Hall. Why would someone from Dubhe Hall suddenly help this kid? Raging Flame Sword Emperor was not the only one who was puzzled. Even the other experts present were puzzled. Countless people were looking for the shadow of this sword light. Suddenly, they noticed that a figure had appeared beside Chu Fengmian. It was a woman. She wore a purple robe and looked magnificent. As she stood there, the stars in the sky seemed to gather on her body. She was the center of the stars. Dubhe art. Many people were shocked when they saw the stars gathering around the woman. Only those who had mastered the Tianshu method were qualified to see such a scene. The Dubhe art was the foundation of Heaven Palace's cultivation technique. Chu Fengmian didn't want to use this Jade Talisman at this time, but he didn't expect that he would be forced into such a dangerous situation. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, the 7 great sects had used all their trump cards. Even an existence like Raging Flame Sword Emperor had suddenly made a move. Moreover, he had concealed his strength so deeply. Obviously, he planned to kill Chu Fengmian once and for all, not giving him any chance to escape. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 2274. You're here. Chu Fengmian looked at Alcade Star Emperor in front of him with nostalgia in his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I didn't expect you to see me in such a sorry state. I also didn't expect you to still be alive. Alcade Star Emperor turned to Chu Fengmian, and her face was as tender as water. This expression made the experts of Dubhe Palace change their faces in shock. Before Alcade Star Emperor betrayed Dubhe Hall, many of them had seen Alcade Star Emperor. At that time, Alcade Star Emperor's face was cold all year round. In Dubhe Hall, no one dared to approach her, let alone talk to her. They had never thought that Alcade Star Emperor would be so gentle to a person. Who the hell is this kid? Many experts of Dubhe Palace went crazy with jealousy when they saw this scene. Alcade Star Emperor was not only the #1 genius of Dubhe Palace since ancient times, but also the #1 beauty of Dubhe Palace. 10,000 years ago, countless geniuses and experts fell for her. Among the experts of Dubhe Palace, many admired and longed for Alcade Star Emperor. They couldn't even get a word from Alcade Star Emperor. But now, Alcade Star Emperor was unfrozen to Chu Fengmian, and her face was full of tenderness. The moment she saw Chu Fengmian, a knot in her heart seemed to be untied. This time, no one can touch you in front of me. Alcade Star Emperor said softly, and suddenly turned her head, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. The 8 war saints, Jianwang, the old poison master, Crescent Moon Shakyamuni, and others all shuddered when Alcade Star Emperor's eyes swept across them. They all clearly saw the killing intent in Alcade Star Emperor's eyes. Even they, who were also immortal kings, couldn't bear this kind of cold killing intent. None of them wanted to be enemies with Alcade Star Emperor. But today, they finally forced Chu Fengmian into a desperate situation, so they couldn't give up the best opportunity to suppress Chu Fengmian. Alcade Star Emperor, do you really want to protect this person and be enemies with us? Jianwang looked at Alcade Star Emperor and suddenly said. Even if you are Alcade Star Emperor, you can't be our opponent today. Why do you have to do this alone? In front of me, no one can touch a single hair of his. Alcade Star Emperor snorted coldly upon hearing Jianwang's words. If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't, then scram. Yao Guang, it's best if you don't interfere in this matter. The Mizar Hall master from the Sky Pivot Hall slowly opened his mouth and said. He looked at Alcade Star Emperor with a complicated gaze. Ever since Alcade Star Emperor had left Dubhe Hall, even the experts of Dubhe Hall could not find him. Today, Alcade Star Emperor had appeared for Chu Fengmian, which made him a little jealous. Don't interfere? What can I do if I insist on interfering today? Alcade Star Emperor looked at Mizar Palace Master and said with a cold smile. I've regretted it once. I won't regret it a second time. When everyone heard this, they were all confused. Only Mizar Palace Master was clear in his heart. In the battle of besieging the Sword Dao sect, in order to prevent Alcade Star Emperor from rescuing him, he tricked Alcade Star Emperor into a forbidden area of Dubhe Hall in advance and completely sealed her inside. Alcade Star Emperor only broke out when the Sword Dao sect was destroyed. What she saw was the ruins of the Sword Dao sect and the news of Chu Fengmian's death. After this incident, the Alcade Star Monarch had completely parted ways with the Sky Pivot Palace. This is the decision of Lord Star Emperor. This kid must die today. This is not something you can change. Mizar Palace Master stared at Alcade Star Emperor and said coldly. Star Emperor. The moment he heard this name, Alcade Star Emperor's eyes flashed with a strange light. Star Emperor, the oldest ancestor of Dubhe Hall, was also Alcade Star Emperor's nominal father. Although Alcade Star Emperor was born in a branch family, she was raised as Star Emperor's daughter since she was young. For her, Star Emperor was her real father. I have already repaid what I owed Dubhe Hall. Since I left Dubhe Hall, I have no relationship with Dubhe Hall. Even if Star Emperor comes in person, I will not leave. Alcade Star Emperor's eyes flashed with a bit of firmness. Mizar, you take the people of Dubhe Hall and leave now. I can pretend that I have never seen you. Otherwise, I will kill you later. These words contained a cold killing intent. Mizar Palace Master could hear that the killing intent was real. If he continued to stay here, Alcade Star Emperor would really kill him regardless of their relationship. His expression was a little hesitant. Mizar Palace Master, don't be afraid. This time, our 7 sects have joined forces. How can he defy the heavens with his strength alone? The old Poison Master suddenly said coldly from the side. Alcade Star Emperor, today, our 7 sects have joined forces. Do you plan to contend against the entire 7 sects with your strength alone? 8 Battle Saints also snorted coldly. A mayfly trying to shake a tree. You overestimate yourself. So what if I can contend against the 7 sects? If he can, so can I. Alcade Star Emperor stood beside Chu Fengmian and said coldly. The knot in her heart was that she did not stand beside Chu Fengmian when the Sword Dao sect was destroyed 10,000 years ago. This time, she managed to do it. To do all this, she was not afraid of death. Alcade Star Emperor is going to risk her life. It's too terrifying. How can this kid make Alcade Star Emperor risk her life for him? Many onlookers saw Alcade Star Emperor's actions and were about to go crazy with jealousy. Love tribulation, love tribulation. On the side of Dubhe Hall, in the galaxy formed by the secret technique, an old man sighed. After glancing at Alcade Star Emperor a few times, he turned around and left, withdrawing from the secret technique. Alcade Star Emperor was almost watched by the older generation of experts of Dubhe Hall. They were not willing to fight with Alcade Star Emperor at this time. You don't have to do this. You don't owe me anything. Chu Fengmian looked at Alcade Star Emperor and sighed. He had fallen in his previous life, but he had never blamed Alcade Star Emperor. Although her identity was noble, she did not represent the entire Dubhe Hall. The decision of Dubhe Hall was not something she could change. It's not a debt. It's just my wish. Alcade Star Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian with tenderness in her eyes. Chu Fengmian did not speak again. He just looked at Alcade Star Emperor. His eyes contained everything. There was no need to explain the relationship between the two. A look was enough. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian laughed. You're here today. You can kill them all together with me to pay tribute to my master. Chu Fengmian looked at the crowd with boundless killing intent in his eyes. Chapter 2275. Boy, do you really think you can get away with the help of Arcade Star Emperor? Raging Flame Sword Emperor sneered when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He looked at Arcade Star Emperor and said, Arcade Star Emperor, even if you intervene today, you won't be able to change anything. If you retreat now, you can still protect yourself. If you insist on being with this brat, you will be buried together with him today. Raging Flame Sword Emperor's tone contained killing intent. That's right, Arcade Star Emperor. You can't stop us alone. Leaving now is the best choice. Jianwang and the 8 battle saints also stepped out. Their eyes revealed some fighting spirit as they shouted in unison. Today, they had paid such a great price and finally forced Chu Fengmian into a desperate situation. At this time, no matter who came, they would not let Chu Fengmian go. Then let's see. Arcade Star Emperor said with a disdainful smile when he heard the threats. He looked at Jianwang and the 8 battle saints. Make your move. With just the 2 of you, I can kill you in 3 moves. As soon as this sentence came out, the faces of the surrounding warriors changed slightly. Arcade Star Emperor's words were arrogant to the extreme. However, no one dared to doubt Arcade Star Emperor's words. Even though Arcade Star Emperor had not fought for thousands of years, everyone still remembered her talent in the past. Jianwang and the 8 battle saints' faces turned ugly when they heard this. They looked at the 2 of them and did not dare to take a step forward. Humph, Arcade Star Emperor, others may be afraid of you, but I am not. I want to see what kind of strength the number 1 genius of Dubhe Palace has. Suddenly, a cold snort sounded. Raging Flame Sword Emperor sneered, took a step forward, and slashed at Arcade Star Emperor with his sword. Among the people present, only Raging Flame Sword Emperor was not afraid of Arcade Star Emperor. Raging Flame Sword Emperor was the number 1 sword master of the Tianjian sect. He was a real invincible old ancestor whose strength had reached the peak of the immortal king realm. Even if Arcade Star Emperor was an invincible existence in the same realm, he was not afraid. The giant sword and Sword Emperor Raging Flame's hand suddenly slashed down. The power of the slash shook the heavens and the earth. The surrounding space was trembling and had the power to shatter the void. However, the Arcade Star Emperor was not afraid at all in the face of this power. She moved her palm, and a stream of star power gathered in her hand. Suddenly, it turned into a long sword, and there were shadows of stars in the long sword. As the sword slashed out, it was as if a river of stars had filled the air. A casual swing of her sword was comparable to the most powerful secret skill in Dubhe Hall. Great success in the heavenly pivot Dharma. Seeing the might of Arcade Star Emperor's sword, everyone was incomparably amazed in their hearts. Once the great accomplishment Heavenly Pivot Law was achieved, one would be able to control the stars, and oneself would be the center of the stars. Ordinary Tao of celestial phenomenon relied more or less on the power of the stars. However, the greater mastery Dubhe art required one to become the center of the stars and control the power of the stars. The power of the 2 was completely different. In the starry sky outside the domain, there were countless stars, and each star contained enormous power. Now, the power of the stars in the sky of the 9 domains was all supporting Arcade Star Emperor. She slashed out with her sword, and the power of the stars circulated, turning into a river of sword chi that soared into the sky. The sword edge of Sword Emperor Raging Flame was shattered by the river of sword chi. However, Sword Emperor Raging Flame was not an ordinary figure. He slashed out with his sword again, and the sword light swept through the heavens and the earth. It entered the river of sword chi and burned the power of the river of sword chi. The 2 of them exchanged blows in the void. In an instant, they had clashed dozens of times. Any one of these collisions was enough to kill an ordinary immortal king. The strength of the 2 of them was not something that ordinary immortal kings could interfere with. The 8 war saints, Qian Yun, and the others wanted to lend Sword Emperor Raging Flame a hand, but they could only give up on this idea after sensing the terrifying power. In the blink of an eye, their eyes fell on Chu Fengmian. Boy, without Arcade Star Emperor to help you this time, I would like to see what other tricks you have. Qian Yun suddenly moved. A glazed pagoda condensed in his palm again, and it pressed down on Chu Fengmian with a loud rumble. Not only him, but the 8 war saints, the old poison master, the old man with white hair, the crescent moon Shakyamuni, and the Mizar Palace master also attacked together after hesitating for a while. The 6 immortal kings suddenly struck out at this moment, launching attacks at Chu Fengmian. You're courting death. When the 6 of them attacked, Arcade Star Emperor, who was fighting with Sword Emperor Raging Flame in the sky, had a flash of anger in his eyes. Just as he was about to attack and kill the 8 war saints and the others, a sword light suddenly slashed towards him. Arcade Star Emperor, your opponent is me. Sword Emperor Raging Flame sneered. Of course, he would not let Arcade Star Emperor stop the 8 war saints and the others. He took the initiative to attack not because he wanted to kill Arcade Star Emperor. Their target today was only Chu Fengmian. As for Arcade Star Emperor, it would be fine as long as he could delay him. He delayed Arcade Star Emperor, and the remaining 8 war saints and 6 immortal kings attacked together. It was very easy for them to suppress Chu Fengmian. Don't worry, I will deal with these people. Chu Fengmian felt Arcade Star Emperor's anxiety and suddenly transmitted a message to her. Although Arcade Star Emperor didn't know what kind of trump card Chu Fengmian had, she believed in Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian wasn't a person who was blindly arrogant. Arcade Star Emperor simply ignored Chu Fengmian and focused on dealing with Raging Flame Sword Emperor. Arcade Star Emperor was delayed by Sword Emperor Raging Flame in the sky. The 8 war saints, Qian Yun, and the others sneered as they stared at Chu Fengmian like a dead man. The glazed pagoda, supported by the power of the 6 people, suddenly pressed down on Chu Fengmian. In an instant, Chu Fengmian felt as if the power of a world was pressing down on his body. The power of the 6 immortal kings could easily shatter a star. They definitely had the power to suppress a world. Boy, without Arcade Star Emperor, I would like to see how you are going to contend against us. The 8 war saints stared at Chu Fengmian and smiled ferociously. His 4 avatars had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. He had never suffered such a loss since he became famous. He was prepared to torture Chu Fengmian after he was subdued and revealed all his secrets. Only then could he resolve the hatred in his heart. Jianwang change. Chu Fengmian's expression did not change. Looking at the glazed pagoda pressing down on him, his body suddenly flashed and disappeared in front of everyone. Chapter 2276. Trying to escape? Seeing Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly disappear, the 8 battle saints, Qian Yun, and the others snorted coldly. Suddenly, they followed closely behind and chased after Chu Fengmian. The immortal kings present had reached a very deep level of understanding of the space Tao. The moment Chu Fengmian's figure disappeared, they all discovered the direction Chu Fengmian left in and immediately chased after him. The 8 battle saints, Qian Yun, the old poison master, crescent moon Shakyamuni, the white-haired old man, and the Mizar Palace master. The 6 immortal kings almost instantly surrounded Chu Fengmian from all directions. Kid, let's see where you can escape to when the time comes. The 8 battle saints stared at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Escape? Who said I'm going to escape? At this moment, Chu Fengmian's face suddenly revealed a confident smile. He felt the fluctuation of the space around him and muttered to himself. It's finally time. Seeing the smile on Chu Fengmian's face, the 8 battle saints, Qian Yun, and the others all showed some uneasiness. They looked at Chu Fengmian with fear. Don't listen to this kid's tricks. The old poison master snorted coldly. Let's go together and suppress this person first. All right. Hearing the old poison master's words, the 8 battle saints, Qian Yun and the others, who were originally a little fearful, no longer hesitated and suddenly attacked together. In an instant, the power of the six of them gathered together and poured into the glazed pagoda in Qianyun's hand, suppressing Chu Fengmian. Seeing the glazed pagoda suppressing him, Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably relaxed. Suddenly, he crushed a jade talisman in his hand. Roar! The moment the jade talisman was crushed, a bestial roar resounded through the heavens and earth. This bestial roar shocked the old poison master, the 8 battle saints, Qianyun, and the other immortal kings. Their faces changed greatly. In front of Chu Fengmian, a huge figure that was thousands of feet tall suddenly appeared. The moment this figure appeared, it suddenly clawed at the glazed pagoda. The glazed pagoda that was formed by 6 immortal kings was suddenly shattered by this claw. This gigantic figure was none other than the ancient desolate white wolf. At the same time, an ancient bronze door suddenly appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Behind this ancient bronze door was a world. Sword domain. This ancient bronze door was the entrance to the sword domain. The sword realm was constantly changing its position in the void. Chu Fengmian had been waiting for the moment when the sword realm was about to reach him. Now, the sword realm had finally arrived behind Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian immediately activated the power of the Sword Emperor Crown and opened the door to the sword domain. In an instant, the surrounding space was the void was to the sword. What is this thing? Sword 2. This is the entrance to Sword Gate. The small world. They were to where they could not. Their eyes and their eyes were, their eyes there. Were, to the, they, Yun, and Yun in the times, they were, they and the others were, and them in and the faces of them, they were there them. Them. Ancient? Question mark. Ancient desolation white wolf. The Mizar Palace Master and the white-haired elder were terrified when they saw the ancient desolation white wolf. The ancient desolation white wolf was a famous ferocious beast. The incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf was much stronger than 10% of the ancient desolation white wolf's power. When Chu Fengmian opened the entrance to the sword domain and pulled the surrounding space into the sword domain, the incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf was vaguely connected to his original body on the Jade Desolation Star. A steady stream of power was sent from the original body of the ancient desolation white wolf to the incarnation. The power of the incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf had reached the immortal monarch realm. Chu Fengmian had been holding the jade talisman formed by the incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf. He had been waiting for this moment. If the ancient desolation white wolf was at the pinnacle of the immortal king realm, no matter how powerful it would not be able to defeat the 6 immortal kings. However, the power of the incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf had reached the immortal monarch realm. It was completely different from before. In front of an immortal monarch, a mere immortal king was not worth mentioning. Kill them! Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. The incarnation of the ancient desolation white wolf immediately took action. Its speed was extremely fast, and in an instant, it rushed toward Qianyun and the other 6 battle saints. Damn it, we were tricked. Qianyun and the others immediately changed their expressions and shouted in shock. Let's go! Qianyun and the others immediately pushed their power to the extreme, bursting out with escape light, and fled fiercely outside. With their experience, they naturally knew that Chu Fengmian had deliberately lured them in. Chu Fengmian had been holding the jade talisman of the ancient desolation white wolf incarnation, but he had not used a single one. He had been waiting for this moment to capture all of them in one fell swoop. If Chu Fengmian had used the jade talisman of the ancient desolation white wolf before, at most, he would have been able to force them to retreat, but he would not be able to eliminate them completely. However, after opening the entrance to the sword domain, the power of the ancient desolation white wolf had skyrocketed. Today, none of the 6 people would be able to leave alive. The essence blood of each immortal king expert represented the inscription of the immortal real body. Chu Fengmian did not intend to let any of them go. Escape? Once you enter the sword domain, there is no need to escape. Sword Domain Entrance, seal it. The Sword Emperor crown suddenly appeared on top of Chu Fengmian's head. The moment the Sword Emperor crown was on top of Chu Fengmian's head, he felt that the entire sword domain was now under Chu Fengmian's control. Chu Fengmian pointed his palm. The surrounding space was completely sealed. Streaks of sword chi soared into the sky, turning into a cage. The 8 battle saints, Qian Yun, and the others' escape light had just approached the edge of the cage when they were forced back by the sword chi within. Although the restrictive array of the upper sword sect had experienced tens of millions of years and had lost a lot of power, it was still not something that immortal kings could shake. The surrounding space had been pulled into the sword domain entrance by Chu Fengmian. Now, it was considered within the sword domain's boundary. Although it was only the edge, Chu Fengmian could not mobilize the power of the restrictive array within the sword domain. However, it was only a part of it. The power of the sword domain entrance alone was enough for Chu Fengmian. With the sword domain entrance completely sealed off the surrounding space, Qian Yun, the 8 battle saints, and the Mizar Palace Master were all trapped within. Now, they could not escape even if they wanted to. Chu Fengmian had schemed for so long to capture them all in one fell swoop. Ancestor of all poisons. Sage King Real Body. Star Annihilation. On the other side, the Mizar Palace Master, the Old Poison Master, and the others immediately gathered their power and attacked the ancient Desolation White Wolf when they realized that they could not escape. Chapter 2277. Roar. The ancient Emperor White Wolf roared. Facing the bombardment of countless immortal techniques, it lifted its sharp claws and swept them down. All the immortal techniques were shattered by the power of the ancient Emperor White Wolf. The combined power of the 6 immortal kings was far from being a match for the ancient Emperor White Wolf. Qian Yun, the 8 battle saints, and the white-haired old man were sent flying by the aftermath of the power. They spat out large amounts of blood from their mouths. The 3 of them had suffered some injuries during the battle with Chu Fengmian. Now that they were fighting with the ancient Desolation White Wolf, their injuries suddenly flared up and their faces turned pale. At this moment, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly appeared beside the 3 of them like a ghost. Die! Chu Fengmian smiled malevolently and slashed down with the sword in his hand. Qian Yun, the 8 battle saints, and the white-haired old man, the 3 immortal kings, were shattered by Chu Fengmian's sword. Their essence blood was swallowed by Chu Fengmian's sword edge. Although Chu Fengmian had already killed 4 of the 8 battle saints' incarnations, there were still 4 of them, including their original bodies. These 4 figures were also killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. For a moment, a steady stream of essence blood poured into Chu Fengmian's body. As the essence blood poured into Chu Fengmian's immortal real body, the missing part of the second inscription was instantly filled. In a moment, the second inscription was condensed. When the second inscription was condensed, Chu Fengmian's power reached a new height. Moreover, the essence blood of the 3 wasn't enough to condense the second inscription. When all the essence blood was devoured by the immortal real body, Chu Fengmian sensed that a new pattern was condensing. This was the 3rd inscription. With so much essence blood, the embryonic form of the 3rd inscription of the immortal real body was slowly being born. This inscription can still be condensed. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed when he saw the embryonic form of the 3rd inscription. He thought that condensing 1 or 2 inscriptions would be the limit given how heaven-defying the inscription was. He didn't expect that he could condense the 3rd one. However, for the current Chu Fengmian, the more inscriptions he could condense, the more advantageous it would be for him. The 4th level of the immortal real body allowed him to condense inscriptions, which made up for his lack of strength. Chu Fengmian was his limit to fight an immortal general as a half-step celestial being. Was only able to fight against an immortal marquis because Chu Fengmian immortal marquis swordsmanship sect he had obtained a large amount of swordsmanship. Against an immortal king, Chu Fengmian could only rely on the inscription of the 4th level of the immortal true body. The more inscriptions he could condense, the more Chu Fengmian's strength would be enhanced. After Chu Fengmian swallowed the essence blood of the three, he felt the changes in his immortal body. He lifted his gaze and looked at the remaining Poison Master, Crescent Moon Discipline King, and Mizar Hall Leader. The three of them had not been injured before, so they were still able to contend against the ancient Desolation White Wolf. However, if they were to contend against it, they would only be able to barely hold it off. The ancient Desolation White Wolf could have easily killed them. They were still alive because the ancient Desolation White Wolf was toying with them. Don't waste time. Your incarnation can only last for 2 hours. I have other things to do. Chu Fengmian looked at the ancient Desolation White Wolf and said. The ancient Desolation White Wolf incarnation was Chu Fengmian's greatest trump card from Shang Sword Sect. He didn't want to use it so hastily, but he was besieged as soon as he left Shang Sword Sect. Chu Fengmian had no other choice but to use the ancient Desolation White Wolf incarnation. Since he had to use the ancient Desolation White Wolf incarnation, Chu Fengmian naturally had to make good use of the 2 hours. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with coldness. The 7 sects had already known Chu Fengmian's true identity and had already shed all pretense of cordiality. Chu Fengmian wouldn't be Chu Fengmian if he didn't take revenge now that they dared to besiege him. Previously, Chu Fengmian still had the idea of hiding his strength and avoiding the 7 sections. After all, the 9 regions were in turmoil and the 7 sects wouldn't pay attention to a junior like Chu Fengmian. However, since Chu Fengmian obtained the inheritance of the Shang Sword Sect, he was no longer a faintly discernible junior. This time, the 7 major sects called out many old antiques who were in seclusion to deal with Chu Fengmian. Since he couldn't hide, there was no need for him to hide. The ancient Desolation White Wolf incarnation wasn't inferior to Raging Flame Sword Emperor even when it was out of the sword domain. At this level, Chu Fengmian could do a lot of things in 2 hours. Chu Fengmian wasn't willing to waste his time on these dead people. Yes. The ancient Desolation White Wolf didn't hold back after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. Its sharp claws fiercely smashed down. The explosive power was completely different from before. In an instant, the old Poison Master, Mizar Hall Master, and Crescent Moon Shakyamuni were sent flying. Their bodies were dripping with blood. They were seriously injured by this attack. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered as he rushed over. The 3 injured people were no longer Chu Fengmian's opponent. As Chu Fengmian's sword flashed, the 3 figures also disappeared under Chu Fengmian's sword. Their blood essence was also devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique and poured into Chu Fengmian's body. In an instant, the 3rd embryonic form began to condense and gradually solidify. It was only when it was condensed to the extent of 2/3 that the power of the blood essence was completely devoured. It's still lacking a little. The amount of blood essence needed to condense the 3rd inscription is also a little more than the 2nd inscription. Chu Fengmian thought in his heart when he saw the changes. The power of the inscription was terrifying, but it was also incomparably difficult to condense it. Although Chu Fengmian didn't know how many inscriptions could be condensed at the most, if it continued to develop, even if the inscription could be condensed endlessly, it would consume more blood essence, and Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to accumulate it. This time, Chu Fengmian could obtain a large amount of blood essence, which was enough to slaughter more than half of the experts of the 7 major sections. The remaining experts of the 7 major sects wouldn't be much more than the experts that were used in this battle. Condensing the inscription required the blood essence of experts above the immortal Marquis realm. As for the martial artists and demon gods below the immortal Marquis realm, their blood essence couldn't be used to condense the inscription. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 2278. Immortal Marquis experts were the peak experts of some of the major forces in the 9 domains. For example, the strongest expert of the 100 Territories Alliance was only an Immortal Marquis. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill a large number of Immortal Marquis and Immortal Kings, he wouldn't get much blood essence even if he slaughtered all the experts in the 9 domains. It's still impossible to condense a large number of inscriptions to improve my strength. Chu Fengmian understood that the best way to improve his strength was to go to the 3 sacred domains or celestial 9 domains, draw upon the power of heaven and earth, pass the Deva tribulation, and step into the celestial realm. Condensing inscriptions could also improve his strength, but it required a large number of inscriptions, and Chu Fengmian couldn't gather enough blood essence to condense these inscriptions. In the extraterritorial starry sky, an immortal general dominated a star domain, and experts above the immortal marquis level were even rarer. Soon, Chu Fengmian dispelled the idea of condensing a large number of inscriptions to improve his strength. For Chu Fengmian, the most important thing to quickly improve his strength was to break through the realm. With his current accumulation, once he passed the Deva tribulation, he might not be stuck in the celestial realm. It was very likely that he would step out of the profound heaven realm. It's time to leave after dealing with the 7 sects. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. He now knew that the real beast besieged by the Lord of Sword Dao wasn't the 7 sects of the 9 domains, but the experts from celestial 9 domains behind them. However, when the Sword Dao sect was besieged, the 7 sects also contributed a lot and could be considered as accomplices. Celestial 9 domains hadn't opened yet, and with Chu Fengmian's current strength, he couldn't go to Celestial 9 domains to find the real culprits who besieged the Lord of Sword Dao. The Lord of Sword Dao was besieged and fell as the ruler of a generation. Those who could participate were all immortal venerables and even immortal emperors. Chu Fengmian didn't dare to rashly confront them. With his current strength, facing immortal venerables and immortal emperors was like hitting a rock with an egg. Chu Fengmian wasn't a reckless person. Chu Fengmian couldn't take revenge on the experts of Celestial 9 domains, but he could start with the 7 sects of the 9 domains. The ancient desolate white wolf needed at least a month or 2 to condense an avatar. Since the avatar had been used, it had to be fully utilized. The grudges from 10,000 years ago could be settled today. Let's go! Chu Fengmian left the sword domain after devouring the blood essence of the old poison master, Protector King Crescent, and the others. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The spectating experts were unable to clearly see what had happened. They only felt that the 8 battle sages and the other 6 immortal kings had all fallen. What exactly happened? The 8 battle sages, Jianwang, the old poison master, the Mizar Hall leader, these undefeatable people have all fallen? Even an immortal general would be scared to death by him. These were 6 immortal kings, and all of them had actually fallen at this moment. Especially when they saw an incomparably huge figure following Chu Fengmian out of the sword domain, everyone was completely stunned. For a moment, they were all talking nonsense. Ancient desolate white wolf. This is an ancient desolate white wolf. This person actually subdued an ancient desolate white wolf. How is that possible? What the hell is going on? How could this be? The ancient desolate white wolf was the overlord of the desolate beast clan. It was simply impossible to subdue an ancient desolate white wolf. The desolate beast race had inherited the violent bloodline of the heaven-devouring beasts. It was almost impossible to subdue them. The ancient desolate white wolf was the overlord of the desolate beast race. It was almost unheard of for someone to subdue an ancient desolate white wolf. But now, this ancient desolate white wolf was standing beside Chu Fengmian with a respectful expression. It had submitted to Chu Fengmian. Even if they racked their brains, they still could not figure out how Chu Fengmian could subdue such a terrifying desolate beast. They had seen how the ancient desolate white wolf had severely injured the 6 celestial kings in the blink of an eye. It's too terrifying. Let's go. Let's go, we can't be enemies with this person. Immediately, many of the spectating demon immortals hurriedly showed mercy. Many of them still wanted to take advantage of Chu Fengmian and fish in troubled waters to gain some benefits. But now, even the 8 battle saints, Jianwang, Mizar Palace Master, these famous invincible experts in the history of the 9 regions had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. They no longer dared to have such thoughts and left one after another. Chu Fengmian did not stop them. These immortal generals and demon immortals were no longer in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Their essence blood could not condense the inscription of the immortal true body. Killing them was just a waste of time. The incarnation of the ancient desolate white wolf could only be maintained for 2 hours. In these 2 hours, Chu Fengmian had to use the incarnation of the ancient desolate white wolf to do more things. Ancient desolate white wolf, go and help Alcade Star Emperor. After killing the 8 battle saints and the others, only Raging Flame Sword Emperor was left among the experts of the 7 major sections. He was now in the sky, fighting Alcade Star Emperor. His attention was completely focused on fighting Alcade Star Emperor, so he had no idea what was happening on Chu Fengmian's side. After Chu Fengmian left the sword domain with the ancient desolate white wolf, he looked at Raging Flame Sword Emperor and pointed at him. Yes. The ancient desolation white wolf replied respectfully. Then, he turned into a white light and charged towards the Raging Flame Sword Emperor. Although the ancient desolate white wolf's body was thousands of feet tall, his speed was astonishingly fast. Raging Flame Sword Emperor could not react in time and was bombarded by the ancient desolate white wolf's claw. Ancient desolate white wolf? The Raging Flame Sword monarch's expression changed when he saw the primordial desolate white wolf. He took several steps back and barely dodged the attack. At the same time, he noticed that Chu Fengmian was standing there unscathed. The aura of the 8 battle saints, Jianwang, and the others had all disappeared. Obviously, they had all fallen. This is a trap to attract the experts of the 7 major sects and catch all of them in one fell swoop. Raging Flame Sword Emperor reacted after seeing all of this. Looking at Alcade Star Emperor and the ancient desolate white wolf besieging him again, he immediately turned his body and quickly turned into an escape light to escape into the distance. Since you're here, there's no need to leave. Raging Flame Sword Emperor, the #1 sword master of the Tianjian sect. Today, I'll have a taste of your swordsmanship. However, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly appeared in front of Raging Flame Sword Emperor. He held the sword with both hands and stared at Raging Flame Sword Emperor. Calm. Wonderful bookhouse. Chapter 2279. Brat, you think you can stop me? Raging Sword Emperor laughed in anger when he saw Chu Fengmian standing in his way. He wanted to escape now because he was afraid of the ancient desolate white wolf and Alcade Star Emperor, not Chu Fengmian. From the beginning, he had never put Chu Fengmian in his eyes. But now, Chu Fengmian dared to stand in his way. Go to hell! Raging Sword Emperor shouted coldly. Suddenly, a shocking sword light burst out from his palm and slashed down. The power of this sword was completely different from the power of the 8 war saints. Even though they were both immortal kings, there was still a gap in strength. Raging Sword Emperor's strength had reached the pinnacle of the immortal king realm. Each of his sword strikes contained earth-shattering power. Chu Fengmian even felt that Raging Sword Emperor's strength was close to the immortal monarch realm. It was no wonder that even the Alcade Star Monarch was unable to kill him in a short time. Chu Fengmian didn't dodge. Facing the sword strike, he struck out with both swords. Yin and Yang circulated in his swords, activating the power of Yin-Yang sword technique. Chu Fengmian's immortal true body had already condensed the 2nd inscription, and even the embryonic form of the 3rd inscription had been condensed. His strength had also skyrocketed compared to before, surpassing ordinary immortal king experts. This time, Chu Fengmian wanted to test his strength with Raging Sword Emperor. Bang! The 2 swords collided with each other at lightning speed. In the next moment, they separated. The force of the collision was enough to shatter an entire continent into pieces. Fortunately, they were in the depths of the void. No matter how strong the force was, it couldn't affect the entire void. If it was outside, just the aftershock of this collision alone would be enough to kill all the living beings within a radius of several hundred kilometers. What a powerful force! Under the collision of Chu Fengmian's sword, he was forced to take a few steps back. Even with his current strength, he was still forced to retreat under this sword. Although Chu Fengmian had countless opportunities and his immortal true body had condensed the 3rd inscription, he he was still slightly inferior to the Raging Flame Sword Emperor in terms of power. The Raging Flame Sword Emperor's strength was infinitely close to the 6th level of the 9th Order Immortal Realm, the High Immortal Realm. To him, he was just short of a few opportunities, and he would be able to truly step into the Immortal Realm. With such strength, he was indeed worthy of being the #1 sword master of the Tianjin sect. However, although there was a difference in strength, it was not impossible to make up for it. The key to a fight between sword cultivators was the collision of sword intent and sword principles. In an instant, a shocking sword will burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. The ancient book of swordsmanship appeared above Chu Fengmian's head, and the sword will that burst out was all added to the sword in Chu Fengmian's hand. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian moved again. He slashed at Raging Flame Sword Emperor again, combining the two swords and slashing down with Chu Fengmian's sword Dao. Humph! Raging Flame Sword Emperor snorted coldly at the same time. His sword intent soared into the sky and burst out. The sword intent of Raging Flame Sword Emperor contained boundless and violent power, like flames. The moment his sword intent soared into the sky, it seemed as if the whole sky was about to be set ablaze. With the sword intent added to his sword, Raging Flame Sword Emperor also slashed out with his sword. The two swords collided once again. This time, the collision was not only about the power of the two swords, but also the clash of their sword intent. Boom! A mass of violent energy suddenly exploded. Both Chu Fengmian and Sword Emperor Raging Blaze retreated at the same time, but this time, Sword Emperor Raging Blaze was the one who retreated the most. His clothes were torn and tattered. He had suffered a small loss under the sword. In terms of pure strength, Chu Fengmian was indeed inferior to Raging Flame Sword Emperor. However, in terms of sword Dao and sword intent, Chu Fengmian was not afraid of anyone. Chu Fengmian's sword Dao had already surpassed the level of an ordinary immortal emperor. No matter how powerful Raging Flame Sword Emperor was, Chu Fengmian still had the upper hand in the clash of sword intent. Again! Chu Fengmian laughed loudly and took another step forward. In an instant, he displayed dozens of sword techniques and slashed towards Raging Flame Sword Emperor. Raging Flame Sword Emperor did not show any weakness and countered with his sword. In an instant, dozens of sword techniques collided with each other. The two silhouettes clashed in the air. Every clash was a clash of swords, each and every move was extremely ferocious. Even for ordinary immortal kings, they wouldn't be able to interfere at all. On the other side, Ancient Desolation White Wolf and Alcade Star Emperor did not take any action. They just watched from the side. Senior Brother Chu's strength has reached such a level. His sword technique has improved compared to his previous life. Alcade Star Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian's direction with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She had always addressed Chu Fengmian as her senior brother. Although Alcade Star Emperor had not formally acknowledged the Master of Sword Dao as her master, Chu Fengmian had taught her swordsmanship. To her, the Master of Sword Dao could be considered half her master. Watching Chu Fengmian and Raging Flame Sword Emperor fight without showing any weakness, she was very surprised. Chu Fengmian's terrifying swordsmanship in her previous life was only known to a small number of people in the kendo school. She was one of them. Especially as she grew stronger, she understood that Chu Fengmian's attainments in the kendo school had reached an incredible level. It was a pity that Chu Fengmian in the previous life did not have any power. He only had a sword technique, but he could not display it. In this life, Chu Fengmian had fully displayed the swordsmanship of his previous life. Even now, as Chu Fengmian's strength grew stronger, his swordsmanship surpassed that of his previous life. He was on par with Raging Flame Sword Emperor despite crossing 5 realms. Even in several confrontations, Chu Fengmian had the upper hand. Sect Master's strength, not only Alcade Star Emperor, but even Ancient Desolation White Wolf was shocked. He had once fought with Chu Fengmian on the Jade Desolate Star. At that time, Chu Fengmian's strength was at the peak of the Immortal Marquis realm. It was difficult for him to fight against an immortal king. But in the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian was now able to fight with Raging Flame Sword Emperor. The speed of his strength improvement had shocked him. All the geniuses, even the monstrous geniuses born in the Desolation era, had never been comparable to Chu Fengmian. Damn it, where did this kid get such a terrifying sword technique? In the sky, after the two figures clashed again, one of them quickly retreated. It was Raging Flame Sword Emperor. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.